All right, I think we're live
Are we live on YouTube?
on YouTube for the whole
On
world.
worldwide YouTube, we're live talking about the Chili Bowl.
The internet's never going to be the
They
same.
they always say they broke the internet. Well, it's going to happen tonight.
Yep. So we're live with the Chili Bowl preview presented by Pitstop Power Hour and Race 92, and we're joined by the one and only Scott Baue.
Hey, I just want to say thanks for kind of I know we talked about it and you put this together. It's kind of last minute.
It was your idea.
Well, I know, but you guys have the means to do it where I don't. But just say thanks to you and Jacob and Calvin. Race 92. I think we'll have a little fun, and we're actually going to get to do a little race commentary here because they're doing the pole shuffle. So this will be good eventually when it comes on.
Yep. So it's on Flow right now or MAP TV if you have MAP TV. So we're going to watch it here in a second, and then Scott will give a little commentary. And to give a little background, Scott, you've owned, how long have you owned the midget team?
Man, off and on. My family's been in auto racing since 1954, I believe. Since around 1954, my dad and a man named Bob Winnie Sr., or Bob Winnie at the time, they had a midget together, or they actually had a drag car together. My dad goes into service, Bob sells the drag car and gets a midget. Dad comes home from the service, they start racing. Bob goes on with other people, very famous car owners, is the second all-time leading USAC feature winner of all time today, still today. And just through that, like a lot of racing families, that's how you kind of get your start, and it just lasts for several, often lasts for several generations. And I've been very lucky, extremely lucky, to be able to be a part of it and meet some great people from it. And even in a way, it's kind of how I met you in a way, because I could talk to your dad about racing, and you guys are big race fans, and it's been an interesting life. It's not always the easiest life, especially when you kind of do it, shoestring style for a lot of years. My dad was lucky to work for a lot of different people. But it's a great life. I personally own a midget. Oh boy, from 89, 90 until the early 2000s. My brother Bill drove. We ran a lot of places across the Midwest. My brother had actually driven for my dad before that. My dad had a car, and I just kind of took that over.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't have traded for the world. It's been an amazing life, and like I said, and it's been fun, and it's led me to just being able to talk about racing, which is what we're going to do here for a little bit tonight.
Yep. You want to introduce our guest on here?
We'll go on a little bit, and then we'll bring her on here about 7 o'clock. So, like I know you're a huge IndyCar fan. I know you go to open wheel races like midget sprint car races from time to time, but when you watch it, what do you think of the sport?
Well, the first dirt race I ever went to, I'm trying to think. I think it was at the 16th Street Speedway over there at the Old Busch Stadium.
Sure.
I was young, and Tony Stewart was racing there that night. But I mean, it's just more. I mean, obviously, I'm a big IndyCar fan, but there's something about dirt racing that's just more exciting than any other form of racing, really.
I agree. What I really like about it, and I've got this weird thing where I went to my first race. I was 6 weeks old. My first race was the USAC Sprint Car Show.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been racing literally for 51 years. And I love IndyCar racing. I love different forms of racing. But there's something about midgets and sprints, Silver Crown cars, that to me is just kind of unmatched. And one of the reasons is no matter how technically advanced we've gotten this sport, the driver still makes a huge difference. And
Yep.
for me, that's a really important part of it. Like great drivers typically rise to the top.
So it's
in
more
this.
kind of like how racing was back in the 60s or 70s.
Yeah, in a lot of ways. And the cars cost a lot today. A midget, like these cars rolling on track right now. I mean, some of these cars are, if the motor's brand new, some of these cars are 70, 80 grand. It's all titanium, bolts, carbon fiber bodies. For this race, there are different rules. If you run USAC national events, some things you can't run. But for the Chili Bowl, a lot of these teams have lightweight frames. And they've spent a lot of money to do this. And it's because they're trying to you'll never get the money back. You never get the money back you spend in racing. But they're racing for something almost bigger than that. There's something that it means something to them more than just the money. And as you go up to the sport, and like I said, I've been around some IndyCar stuff. And that as you go through the sport, it starts to change. It just kind of starts to rotate, and it starts becoming more about the money and who can bring the money, who talent doesn't always matter. And I hate to say that because I don't want to have any disrespect for any of the guys in the IndyCar doing it right now. Any guys in F1, any guys in NASCAR, the best drivers are the best drivers. But there are other talented race car drivers in the world, and a lot of them are at this race right now.
So if you took a driver the caliber of Kyle Larson or Rico Aber and you put him in a lower team midget, do you think it would still be very competitive, or would it make that much?
I would tell you that when Kyle Larson's hot, Kyle Larson can almost get in anybody else's car in the field and win. Mm-hmm. At say a normal, this race here, you've got 300 some cars. There are some cars there that are just old, and they're just there to be part of it. And so, would he run better than the guy driving it? Yeah, he would. But he wouldn't necessarily win. But I would say there's probably over 100 race cars that he could jump into and win. To Chili Bowl, and he's not the only one. Justin Grant could do it. Chris Wyndham, just Chris Bell,
Rico Aber,
who's an incredible talent, and Chris Bell's been hot this week. I mean, he has looked great this week. Larson, I thought earlier, and these pole shuffles are going to really tell a story. I thought Larson's car looked a little choppier this week. It wasn't as smooth. It wasn't as easy of a drive for him. Mm-hmm. Where Chris Bell and Rico were both just effortless. I mean, and when I say effortless, I mean they're giving it everything it's got, and it's driving like a dream.
Right. How do you know how the IndyCar drivers? So we got Ferrucci. Was Daly doing it again?
Daly wasn't there. Ferrucci, Santino got up on the other night. Track was a little choppy up top. I think he found it to be wise and very prudent to run through the middle and the bottom. Tonight, he got up on the wheel and was passing for I believe he was passing for a transfer spot. And I kind of forget what happened, but he got caught up in a little melee, knocked the front end out. But, he jumps out of the car. He salutes the fans. The fans cheer him back. It's only 25% capacity this year. But, I think, I don't know Santino as a person, but I think there's something endearing to him for a lot of people.
Right.
And I think he was able to show that to those fans, even though he didn't get to run a lot this year. But
and I don't think he had any experience on dirt before this, did he?
So he did run last year, and they did do some testing. He was with a really good team this year. Dave Mack Motorsports. His son actually, Cannon McIntosh, actually drives for Keith Kunz now. But Dave Mack Motorsports, great race team. He he was driving for them. They went and did some testing. And he turned some laps and he looked good.
Not to interrupt, but we just got a nice comment that says great hair on this guy.
Oh man, I love it. My hair. So I'm going March to March on the hair, and I know you've heard me say this. So I got my last haircut right before the lockdown. Before we kind of got locked down, and we got sent home from work, and I don't know, man. It was like, and I kind of go let my hair kind of get a little long anyway. And I waited till like June. I was like, man, I gotta go get a haircut. And then I was like, I'm gonna go March to March. I'm just gonna see how long it'll grow again. Because I used to have really long hair as a kid when I was like 16, 17, 18. And I was like, well, it's a lot thinner on top, but let's just see what we can get done here. So I got roughly a month and a half left, I guess. And then we'll see how long we can get it.
You need to bring back the Jeff Gordon mullet.
Yeah. Well, Jeff had a very special mullet. He kind of rocked that Caesar in the front. Had
Well,
a kind of long. Yeah, he had that great mustache, and but his hair was pretty straight. So he really had that. Even though he's from California, he really embraced that whole Southern Indiana look. Man, those, man, you talk about Jeff Gordon. Now there's a guy. I watched him come back. He come back here as a kid, and run sprint cars. I didn't see him run the sprint cars when he was so young. But boy, you talk about talent in dirt racing. I mean, he was, man, Jeff was something else. He was, he won the Belleville Midget Nationals, and he lapped up to second behind a guy named Steve Knepper. And if anybody knows about dirt midget racing, Steve Knepper, brilliant driver, and the Belleville Midget Nationals, giant half-mile racetrack. Unfortunately, some people know Belleville from the unfortunate passing of Brian Clausen, but it is really a driver's racetrack. And boy, Jeff and Tony Stewart in their youth were something special to watch.
And Jeff even said if he came along a couple years later, he probably would have raced in IRL.
He wanted to run Indy cars, and from the stories, I don't know Jeff. I've spoken to him back in the day, as you would, just in the pits or at random place when we were all 18, 20 years old. But he wanted to. He did a test. I forget the guy. I'm sorry.
He does Super V. I think it was.
Yeah, he did at Raceway Park, and there was an issue with it. And I forget the people's names. They that own that car. They'd been around racing, good people. I just forget who they are, but he wanted to go down that route, and the doors were shut. And there was a guy named Andy who worked. He'd come from out east. He had worked for Bob East. And in Andy now today, he went to work for Hendrick, Everham, and Hendrick. I kind of forget how the whole thing went down now, but he went to work. Andy went to work for Hendrick. Long story short, Hendrick asked him, what's Jeff doing? Because they had been roommates, and actually then they lived together down in Charlotte too. And he's like, well, he doesn't have anything. He may have already been running that Ford deal too at that time, but it's like, you don't have anything. And then that's kind of how that all got started. But Andy, he knew him from the midget and sprint car days.
Mm-hmm.
So that really, was it, probably one of the best connections Jeff ever made.
Oh yeah, for sure. So we have a couple comments coming in, a couple questions for you. You're already being a big hit on the internet. So we got Frank Wilson said, I am very aroused.
Yeah, that would be Frank. Frank, when you say there's people on the internet, Frank is a interesting human being. I actually know Frank away from the internet. And but that wouldn't surprise me, knowing Frank. That's not a shocker, I guess we could say.
All right, here's a legitimate question for you. Does the engine chassis make a difference running in the Chili Bowl?
It can. What makes a huge difference, in my opinion, and this is my opinion, other people have opinions, how good the car accelerates. So even Kevin Swindell was talking about this a little bit the other night. He said that even himself said he didn't think the weight, even though the Swindells are all about weight, he said this on the broadcast where he goes, it's a little less about weight, it's more about the engine today because we have so much motor. And these cars do. I mean, any of these SR11s, any of these Toyotas you're seeing are, they can make up to 400 horsepower. You don't necessarily want them to. You're really looking for them to accelerate smoothly so they don't spin the tires, especially when that track starts getting slicked off. And you got to keep the tires under you. I mean, it's all about traction, like in all motorsports. And so, I mean, big horsepower matters when you've got that big ledgy cushion. You got to keep the tires spinning so it doesn't hook and push the nose. But all in all, they do make a huge difference. But the right combination makes as big a difference as the type of motor you're running. Now, most of these Toyotas are now built by Speedway engines out of here in Speedway, Indiana. They've spent a lot of time and effort in Toyota. They spent a lot of time and effort to get them where they run smooth, they accelerate nice. The 25 car, if anybody's watching the pole shuffle, the 25 car, they actually do their own motors. I believe they own Pink engines now, Ed Pink engines. Tom Malloy, a lot of people know him in other racing circles. He has vintage stuff, but he has other things like other interests as well, like Trent Shoring, which is a big company of his, and then Ed Pink Racing Engines, which I'm pretty sure they own. And so they build great motors too. There's a lot of great motor builders out there, but a long answer for an easy question. It's that motor makes a huge difference. Chassis makes a big difference. There's so many different chassis styles, and there's a million different ways to skin the cat, as they say. So I mean, it's really just what works for that driver and that team, and that's J-Mac was running the car early and was making an amazing run through the alphabet soup. Unfortunately, on the last lap, somebody got in the back of him, spun him, or he had been in the C mains, which I think he started in the I, maybe a little bit farther down, and he was running a Beast 4-bar car. Very few guys even run them, even though Bob builds great race cars, and they're just kind of not the flavor right now. And he was making an amazing run, and he had a Chevy motor in, one of the rare Chevys. Those Chevys were that type of Chevy motor. There's several different types of Chevy motors. That type of Chevy motor was actually come along when Tony Stewart owned his midget and sprint car teams. Chevy built midget motors, and they make great horsepower, but they had some problems with getting them to run smooth. And it looks to me, I know I don't know how much time they've spent, but I know they've spent a lot of time trying to get them to run smoother and better. They look great. The last few times I've seen them run, they looked really great. I don't know if Tony still owns the motors and Bob's team's just using them. I'm not sure how it goes, but it all makes a difference.
Right. So how much does the setup change, like when you go to different tracks? Like, is the car pretty much set up the same no matter what track you go to, or is there really that much of a difference?
That is a great question. You have baselines. Like if you're going to go run Eldora or Terre Haute, back when we used to run Terre Haute, you'd probably go with a little stiffer right front spring. You go with maybe a little more compression in the front shocks. Mm-hmm. Maybe a little more compression right. Of course, there's so much adjustable stuff today. Some of that stuff's built in. You'll hear them talk about the shock adjuster knobs in the cockpit. And there's so many adjustments they can kind of make with that. They're similar, but there's little differences. Like the front axle, you might have the front end narrowed up a little bit on a shorter track. You might spread it out a little bit on a bigger track. That right rear placement's going to be a little different depending on if the track is slicker. They've got the cars built a little bit different today, to where they've got like the Bullet cars, like Key's cars. They got a little bit longer right rear axle, and we can run deeper offset wheels on the right rear. Offset of the wheels change a couple of things. The offset of the wheel will change not only where the wheel sit, where the center of the tire is sitting, but if say I could put a 1 inch off wheel and get the center of the tire in the same spot as I get a 3 inch off wheel, but the difference is where the pressure is on that tire and on that wheel. So if I got a 3 inch off wheel, I can actually get more pressure to the outside of the tire and make it dig harder. So I mean, there's so many little things. It's the little, like all these cars are very similar, but everybody kind of has like a little thing, and that's a, there's the subtleties of the sport. Some guys don't like a super tight car, so you try to leave them a little freer. Maybe keep the right rear out a little more. Maybe run a little more air in the right rear. Maybe run a little more compression in the right rear shock. It's just, man, they all look similar, and they are similar, but they're all different.
So is there a big difference between racing indoors versus outdoors? Or I guess Chili Bowl, and also St. Louis are the only two indoor races?
Yeah, right now, as far as I can remember, I mean, Fort Wayne is pavement. That's a lot different deal.
Right.
For the Chili Bowl and St. Louis, the tracks are a little different, so they're not quite the same either. But Chili Bowl's actually, and we're starting to see USAC go run more of these smaller tracks like this. Like they're going to go out, they on their Eastern swing, they'll run a couple smaller tracks. The Jason Leffler Memorial Race is always at a track that's a little bit smaller, and they're similar. They're different. Chili Bowl's got a lot of character in it, and the track prep guys they've got doing it are amazing. I mean, these guys, like if you follow them on Twitter, they know like the track holds more water at the end of the week because there's so much water it's been put in the track. It's a concrete floor, so you got water sitting at the base of the dirt. So they'll start bringing water back. So the track will stay a little wetter. They know exactly how to work the track to get the cushion where they want it. Chili Bowl is so unique compared to a lot of tracks, but the racing's similar. I mean, it's all fairly similar. There's things that you're going to do at Tulsa, driving wise, that maybe you would do at Little Belleville or little tracks, but you may not do at some of the bigger 3/8s, the bigger quarter miles. But it's all fairly similar. It's just a little different.
We got another question specifically for you. What are your hair plans post March? Thanks in advance.
My hair plans post March are to be. I'm going to go back more to a gentlemanly cut, something that's acceptable in an office, even though we won't be back in the office for months yet. It'll be June or July, but I'll get it cut down. I forgot one thing I forgot about long hair is it takes so long to dry. It's just it isn't near as fun to have at 51 as it was when I was 17. I kind of enjoy the ease of just getting out and just drying my hair and going on with my day.
Frank Wilson wants to know if you're seeing anyone.
Yes, I think Frank knows exactly who I'm seeing.
All right, that's a nice little break. We can get back into talking about midget racing.
It's the same person I've been seeing for 27 years.
It's a long time.
It is. Good time, though. It's been a great time. that as far as like I'm watching this race now, and these guys are really going at it for this pole shuffle. I forget exactly how the format works. Right now, they're running 4 cars at a time. Cannon McIntosh just got into the fence. Larson's running second. I tell you, Justin Grant is another one who was extremely fast the other night. Larson's running him down, but if you notice anybody watching, Larson's car really gets on the right rear when it gets the right rear in the cushion, although Grant's car did the same thing. They're just running, and not only are they running hard, they're also probably trying something, because you don't, Chili Bowl's 55 laps. If you're good in the first 30 laps, there's a great chance you're not going to be good in that last 25. You'll see guys just take off early, but they start coming back, if they get more cautions or whatever, you start seeing where they can't get away. And it's a thing where, you got to find that balance. And of course, again, you have the adjustments, you can adjust the shocks. As a race, early in the race, you'll have the front shocks tied down to where they can't get back on the rear wheels quick. You'll have the rear shocks, less compression in them. You'll have more compression in rear shocks. And then as the race goes, you start releasing the front shocks so it gets on the rear wheels. You'll start tying down the rear shocks so you keep more weight on the rear of the car. You're trying to find that balance, and you got to have a driver that understands, who's really in the rhythm and knows the track and kind of can feel if it's ledging up or if it's taking rubber, which hopefully it doesn't take rubber, because when they start taking rubber, it becomes more one lane once everybody finds the rubber.
Right.
But these drivers, this track is always a moving target, and they've got to always be aware of that. And like a Tracy Hines or somebody, or anybody will tell you, I've heard Tracy say, if you're leading, it's always the hardest time because you're the leader, so you don't know what's going on behind you. You don't know if somebody's found something that you haven't. So sometimes leading is not always the best thing. But sometimes getting into lap traffic is a good thing because it forces you to move. And once you move, you're like, oh, hey, man, track's better here, than it was there, that type of thing.
One thing I've noticed from watching Kyle Larson, like we went to the Brickyard USAC race, and just on TV, it seems like he's always running. He likes to run the outside line, like real close to the wall.
What I always, running the top a lot of times that's where the grip is.
Right.
But what I've really, when he unfortunately had to come back and run sprint cars and midgets and was doing that whole thing, and this summer was just so fast. One thing I really noticed that Kyle was great at is during a race, he'll find that one spot on the track where he's faster than everybody else. And then he figures out how to maintain speed every during the rest of the lap. And then he'll find that one spot where he can make up a lot of time on you. And I've read some articles, again, this is a guy I don't know, but I've read articles, and this is a guy that's a lot more cerebral with his racing than I think people realize. I've read articles where he says, he would sit. I don't know if he still does this, but he would sit down when he go to the racetrack. He would draw the track out like on a piece of paper to get his mind to start thinking about where he needs to be on the track. So this guy's pretty cerebral. He's not just stab and steer.
Well, that reminds me. For IndyCar, they did a video thing with Rossi where he did some neuroscience thing where he memorizes the track, and they blindfolded him and they gave him
right,
and he knew exactly when the turns were.
Right.
Probably. Yeah. And I would imagine that would be a lot easier to do with the dirt track, to kind of memorize, and maybe not.
They have a lot of character. Chili Bowl, even something like that inside berm, is it taller this year? Is it shorter this year? Has it been pushed down during the week? Did they build it back up when they were grading the track?
Right.
In that berm, sometimes, depending on if the cushion gets so far around, gets so choppy, you'll see guys really come on late running with that left front up on the berm. And, again, I mean, where do you hit it? Where do you catch it? Do I turn in early and catch it middle out? Do I get in on it? Do I back my corner up? I mean, there's a lot to it.
And the track conditions can probably change, I mean, from heat to heat, right?
I'm sorry?
Like the track conditions could probably change from heat to heat.
Absolutely. In indoor racing, another thing, which I haven't really seen so much at Chili Bowl this year, but if anybody looks as they're going up the ramp, right, as you pull out to go up the ramp or as they're coming down the ramp, there's a door right behind where you exit the track. And when the fumes are really bad, like they put in a lot of exhaust fans and stuff now, but when the fumes would get really bad in there, they'd open those doors and it would change kind of how that is down there in 3 and 4. So, and the same thing would happen at Fort Wayne in indoors. They open the track on the pavement. All of a sudden, the track gets a lot colder. The rubber isn't sticky, and it would really change how the track raced from race to race. And the same thing can happen here. Sometimes these little reworks. Now, like I said, they've got it really down to a science. But you go to some racetracks, they go out and do a rework that you think is going to make the track better. It'll actually make it worse. It'll make the dirt looser, a lot dustier. So it doesn't always, it doesn't always do what you think it's going to do. And then that's when you go to plan B, right? That's what they always say. Everyone has a plan right until you're punched in the face. And then you got to figure it out from there.
Right.
So why don't we bring on Kimb and let her discuss a little bit. The reason I asked Kimb to call in is Kimb, like I mentioned before, she has a lot of knowledge as an announcer, and she's done a lot of announcing, and she actually has done the Chili Bowl. I think she did maybe one of their very first internet broadcasts. And I wanted to get people's different perspective on things, not just how I see it or how anybody else sees it. So if we can get Kimb to come in.
Hey, Scott, how are you?
Hey, great, Kimb. Thanks for joining us. How you doing?
Hey, I'm good. Thanks for asking me. I thought I was like tuning into the Pitstop Power Hour, and I found out it's like Scott Baue's luscious locks.
Yeah. What do you think of this, right? I mean,
I do.
I know you've known me for over 20 years.
But you're not supposed to have better hair than me. Come on, that's rude.
So I think we've known each other probably 20 years now, and I've never really let the hair grow long, like really long.
I've never seen it that way. No.
Right.
I like it though. I like it.
Yeah, like I said, it's a lot thinner on top than it was. It's not. I don't like the thinness on top. The length in the back accentuates it, so it's really getting to me.
I like it. Brings out the color of your eyes.
That's right. Everything
as does your shirt. As does your shirt. Yes.
As does my shirt. That's right. So Kimb, as you were listening to us, as we were talking, again, the reason why I wanted to bring you in because Kimb has announced thousand races, maybe.
Probably. Like I haven't actually kept track because when I started, I always thought it was like one race or one season at a time. So
right.
I don't know exactly how many that's been, but there's been a nice variety there, and there's been, surprising to me, years and years of that. And like your buddy Aaron was saying, I met you at 16th Street Speedway, where I used to work on cars for a year. And then
who'd you work for?
I worked for Larry Martz.
And who did Larry Martz have as a driver?
Oh, well, he had a whole bunch of drivers, but Tony Stewart was probably the one that was best known. So, in the time that I was, kind of helping out Larry, and the thing that is interesting when you were talking about the fact that you've been to races for all of your 51 years, your dad was involved, and there was all of that. It was just like I wandered into a racetrack one day and was like, "Ooh, this is really fun and cool."
Right.
So it's definitely a first generation thing, not something I grew up with. So what I know has been really just in the last several years of my life. So I'm jealous of people who have that sort of like innate knowledge, because they've always been around a shop and they always know, like how things have developed and history and all of that. But I just kind of wandered in and I liked it. And Larry had so many good drivers in his cars.
Larry did too.
He was
Kevin Doty,
Donnie Beechler,
that's right.
JJ Yaley, the list just went on and on and on.
Right.
And, Larry, he never really had the ability to put together like a full, here we're going to race this whole USAC season thing really until the Fikes got involved and stuff like that. But everybody always wanted to run Larry's car if it was like a one-off deal, because they knew it was going to be impeccably prepared. They knew everything was going to be ready to go. And Larry is just such a, he's the most soft-spoken guy 99% of the time. But you get, and his son is just like him. Tate's very nice and polite and soft-spoken, but you get those guys into a competitive environment, and buddy, you better get out of the way if you're doing something wrong.
Was that something that was kind of surprising to you when you first go? See, I'm always interested in talking to people who did not grow up in the sport at all. And I find those stories so great, because you're really a first generation. You've got nephews and nieces now who now like auto racing. So, and so, you're passing that on. But did it surprise you how competitive? And not just the men, if you want to say, but the families, the wives, the girlfriends. I mean, anybody involved, just the competitive level, and something like the Chili Bowl ramps it up even higher. And it's always amazing to me.
That was probably exacerbated a little bit because, again, away from racing, or at the beginning of, say, a racing night, or on a regular racing night, if you talk to Larry Martz or Tate, they're going to, again, very soft-spoken, like, hey, how's it going? What's going on? Do you need anything? But then, like, the competitiveness, like, from top to bottom is just shocking, really. And that was true for, Larry had some really good guys working for him as well. Danny Purcell, who, knows so much about motors and how to make them go. Oh, but if that motor wasn't running smoothly, I would hide from Danny. I'm not going to lie. I'd just run and hide from him. Bobby Steed was like the mechanical guy, and I still believe that there's probably nothing mechanical that Bobby Steed couldn't fix. But they were so competitive, and
it really is a thing. People always have the joke of seconds first loser, and I don't buy that. That's not who I am. I know that's how I'm supposed to say that. That's cool. I don't think people truly understand sometimes when a guy runs seventh, how hard an effort that seventh place was. But I do know that when you're in situations like when you're hiring drivers and you're hiring the best guys available, I mean, you do that for one reason, and you do that to win.
Oh, absolutely. And there was never, I don't think, if you said to Larry Martz at the beginning of an evening, you probably got a fifth place car tonight, he probably would turn around and go back. If you're not going to put like 100%, literally everything you have into making that night a success, then you just don't need to be around.
I mean, people got to understand, unless you've got a sponsor, and I'm watching again, I'm watching this TRD truck and trailer, nobody knows about Keith Coons when they didn't have TRD, and Keith was still building great race cars and winning, and that's how he got TRD as this big sponsor.
I remember way back in the day when
I know,
but you would still, that was like back when Keith Coons didn't have like long facial hair and stuff like that.
Keith Coons
he worked his ass off.
Keith Coons,
Yeah.
And then, but it's, it's, I mean, you hire drivers and you want to win. And when you do something like the Chili Bowl, I mean, you put everything into it. And what I was kind of getting at earlier is you're not making money at this. I mean,
No.
you're just not. I mean, you're going to lose money unless you have good sponsors and people who just stand beside you because they want to see the same thing for you as you see for yourself. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah. And, I think sometimes one of the really hard things to read about, like a Chili Bowl, which is, for some people, it's as much fun as it is anything else.
Well,
and I was watching Flo earlier today, and there was some conversation about like, oh, that guy's just happy to be here. He's happy to be participating. Like I said, Larry will joke around with you and he will have fun, but there is a moment in the night, which is probably right around after driver's meeting, where a flip switch, it's like flipping the switch, and man, it's all business, and you just don't jack around after that. You can you're laughing and joking and having fun 1 second, and then another second it's not. I remember the first time I went to the Chili Bowl, and it was to work on Larry's car. Guy by the name of Billy Pouch, no slouch, right?
Yeah, amazing race car driver.
Right.
Amazing race car driver.
Was driving the car, motor problems, first night. I mean, Larry would not have gone if it hadn't been like he was going to win. And so we ended up, in the alphabet soup, which was not nearly as deep in the alphabet.
No,
back in the
day.
The
alphabet was a lot more condensed back in those days.
Yeah. I mean, the first time I went to the Chili Bowl, they still had first couple times, I think, they still had the basketball court on the end.
Right. Yeah.
Like they would, and again, there was time for that. You could horse around during the day a little bit. There were things that you needed to get done, but when it was business time, it was business. And, but that whole week, man, Larry and Tate were beside themselves. The whole team, really. And, Danny Purcell, I'm surprised we didn't have to pull his head out of the oven. It was his motor, Well,
a big difference between this year, how they do it now, too, versus, with all the nights, while there's 60 cars a night, the way they do passing points and stuff, although they've always done passing points, but they've modified the system, you can have a bad heat race and still come back and run well. Used to be those early Chili Bowls, that heat race was everything.
We knew.
It was your whole weekend. I mean,
we knew we were cooked.
Yeah.
That first night, Hot Laps was, if I remember correctly, Hot Laps was good. But then after that, it wouldn't run. And, so it was like, hey, we're here. We're so excited. And, Tate was, oh my gosh, Tate Martz was just a little kid then. And he was like, I would sleep outside on the sidewalk just to get a, chance to run the Chili Bowl. And like in 10 minutes, like all that elation, all of that super focused concentration, because we were there to win. And even though that was the only team I'd ever been associated with up to that point, that was my expectation too. I mean, it was, we were there to win the Chili Bowl.
And at that time, that car was capable of doing it.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, at that time, you could, while there's so much better, I don't know how, I'm not trying to say it that way, but there's 300 some cars today. There are 200 amazing race cars at this Chili Bowl.
Yeah.
Or at least 150. I mean, cars that can win. There were cars that went home in some of the early races that, with the right brake or the right driver, could win the show. It wasn't quite like that as much then, so you knew that you had the driver in the car that you were really looking at, really contending for it. And and yeah, I've walked out there. I've walked out there the same way, So, but one of the reasons I had you in is because you worked one of the first internet.
I did.
Yeah,
I did.
And kind of walk us through what it's like. I assume there was around 200 cars at that time. 180.
It was 2003 when I did it. So yeah, they were getting up there, because at the time it was, it was like, oh my gosh, there's a second H feature, and that was, as big as I think it had ever been before. So it was a significant. It was a big week, but did not start on Monday. Back then, I think it was Wednesday, maybe, I forget exactly.
I think you practiced on Monday, ran Tuesday.
Yeah,
something like that, or maybe practice Tuesday, ran Tuesday night, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, but it was still like the whole thing was just super amazing and I was like, this is so much better. Not that I don't appreciate it and didn't love every minute that I spent, working for Larry Martz, but in a position where you're announcing or talking about it, then you get to see more of everything. Now, Chili Bowl is so big that no matter where you are or what you're doing, you feel like you're always missing like 90% of what's going on.
Right.
Because, if you're on the track, something's happening in the pits. If you're in the pits, something's happening on the track, or even on the other end of the pits. But, I was in a position to see all of the on-track action that year. And it was just, for me, it was the most amazing thing ever. And I got to interview all of like the heat race winners, the B feature winners, the feature winners, for the entire week. So for me, that was like the perfect situation. And the amount of talent, even back then, now, like it's exponentially bigger, right? But still, when you're talking about the guys that we saw run and how competitive that event was, I remember the thing that I remember most distinctly about 2003 was the second place finisher, who was Jay Drake.
Right. I remember that now. I know what you're talking about.
He transferred from the B, so he started in the back of the A main, and he was running for Keith Kunz. And his interview when he got out of the car, I thought we were going to have to get someone to escort him home. And that was probably Keith's job. I mean, he was seriously not disappointed, but he was definitely like, second place is like kissing your sister, or the first loser. And he really was. He was so close to winning that thing. And he put absolutely 100% of the blame on himself for not winning that race, because Keith Kunz said to run the bottom and he didn't. And, and he was like, and he was like, I hope there aren't any knives around when I get home. I mean, the guy was not exactly suicidal over not winning the Chili Bowl, but he was despondent. I mean, absolutely despondent over not winning. And it was so close. And that was after transferring from the B. So you would think that would be like, wow, what a great accomplishment. What a great Chili Bowl. And he was having absolutely none of it.
And again, that goes back to that competitive side, right?
And Jay is another one of those guys that he's got that California thing.
Super low key.
But man, when it is time, you cannot joke around or jack around or be anything but focused, or you're just not going to be around. I mean, there is a time for playing around, and there is a time to be serious. Last time I went to the Chili Bowl, gosh, what was that? Like maybe it's been 4 years since I've been. I was wandering around during the day, and you know how some of the little kids make the dirt tracks, on the end of the trailer, things like that. And you see it all the time. Guess who I saw playing on a dirt track on the end of a trailer? No. Kyle Larson.
Oh, I believe that.
I mean, there were some little kids around and everything, but there was like, and it was in the back, it was Keith Kunz. So there's, like Kyle Larson and Christopher Bell, and they're playing Matchbox cars with like little kids and at the time that was fine. But man, when it's time to go to work, it is truly time to go to work.
Yeah. And I think, that same vein runs through so many of those guys. And you see it here, it's a really interesting thing. Like you see how some guys react. Some guys are so upset when something happens, and then you'll see guys who say, it's okay. And it's hard to get a read on some of these guys. I mean, because you don't want. I have, me personally, like would not react well to somebody spinning me out.
Right.
But if I were a driver, but I do understand too, as a driver, you got to go race these guys again.
Yes.
So there is that whole element of it too. It's sometimes you get more worked up watching than maybe the driver's doing the car. It just depends on the situation. But when you have some, in these, racers live in the moment, like all great athletes live in the moment. And I think that's maybe what some people who don't live in the moment understand is like these guys, like, so that moment meant everything to them.
Yeah. Well, and having been in the position to interview lots of drivers, as soon as they climb out of the car,
absolutely.
There is so much. And I think one of the things that I like about racing is, it's one thing if you're an athlete and you are track and field or swimming or whatever. And a lot of it basically comes down to you and your preparation and your abilities and all of that. But with racing, you have to throw so much more into it. It's not just you, it's every other car on the track. It is, especially on dirt, but in pavement, it comes into, it depends on the track. It depends on, if that was the night that a bolt fell off, like so many things have to come together to get there. But I think, when drivers climb out of their cars, it is so much about what went on for those 50 or 55 laps. Back in 2003, Jay knew he could have won that race. He knew climbing out how good his equipment was. He knew exactly how good he was. And he knew that at some point, maybe it was just one corner, he made not a bad decision, but not the decision that was going to get him there to win.
Not a race-winning decision.
Bingo. There are other drivers who they climb out and they'll be like, I didn't have any brakes the last 30 laps. I am thrilled. I finished third. That was great. I can't believe the car held together. So much of that really goes into it. Like I said, so many of these guys are just uber competitive.
Right.
But you have to try and understand when the driver is climbing out of the car, what that has been like for them, because me watching is not nearly the same as what they have been experiencing behind the wheel. So if their car was not set up the greatest and they soldiered it home to a win, that's a win for them, even if they had, to struggle to get it there. They're just like, I'm tired. The race is over. That was the best run we could possibly have had.
That's the best it had. That's there's a lot of guys that are going to walk out there tonight that had cars that could win, but due to something happening, that was the best that car was going to run.
Yeah.
And they may run 2-3 spots ahead of the best where that car could run. And you see that every night. And that's a big thing about dirt track racing that I think the average person may not understand. A Cup car and Indy car, typically if you the drivers and the cars are so equal that if you are good, you're probably going to win, run second, run third. If that's typically where you're supposed to run, unless there's a mechanical failure, pit stop error, something like that nature. When you run Chili Bowl dirt sprint cars, it's a thing where you may just have to, you don't have brakes, or there's stories like Sammy Swindell winning Eldora, shutting the switch off at the end of straightaways, to get the car to turn in the corners. And so there's so many different types of stories at the end of a night where some guys just didn't run well, and then there's other times where, man, you have no idea what I was dealing with. Jacob's ladder fell off 5 laps in the race. I caught the fence and knocked Jacob's ladder off, or or the right rear radius rod fell off, or and that's a lot of stories that you don't hear about at the end of a race, but every night those stories are there.
Oh, absolutely, every night, and that is one of the things that makes it so exciting and interesting and dynamic, like all of those things. And I was earlier this week I was watching, gosh, I think it was Mike Hess in the Pioneer Seeds car. And you're just like,
that's right.
Dude, don't take a green car to the Chili Bowl, even though I'm not superstitious, right?
Right.
But that poor guy, whenever anything happened on the racetrack, it'd be like, and Mike Hess. And he didn't do necessarily anything wrong.
Right.
But, if something happened and he was on the racetrack, it happened right near him. And I just felt so bad for him because, again, he is a great driver. But,
yeah. And Mike, Mike will be very underrated. Of course, he doesn't race professionally anymore. He works professionally in racing, obviously with Believe the World of Outlaws. But he tweeted after that, he said something about he went to Whataburger and he was happy to report he didn't run into anything or he didn't get spun or something like that. And that's all you can do, right? I mean, Mike's out there. I mean, he takes it serious, but he's not racing professionally anymore. He's not, so, I mean, you can kind of take that from it, right? I mean, making a main, while I think Mike Hess is a guy who could definitely win it if the cards fell the right way, he has that type of ability. He's not a guy who's trying to race professionally anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. But still, you don't go to the Chili Bowl.
Right. That's right. Absolutely.
To be a ping pong ball.
That's right.
I remember that, gosh, it must have been 2003, I think. Somewhere around there, it was Ricky Gaunt's first ever ride at the Chili Bowl.
Right.
Now,
Super
Ricky, not untalented, and one of your more colorful characters. Very colorful. So, first time at the Chili Bowl, which is right around that 2003 mark, he goes out in hot laps, loops it twice. So, doesn't even really get in a lap during hot laps, right? Goes out for his heat race, loops it twice, doesn't even finish his heat.
Right.
So, I think it was Saturday before the poor guy ever completed the lap.
Yeah.
He and I had the opportunity to ask him about it, but not until the next year. And I was like, I thought you said you weren't coming back. After his heat race, he was out of the car and he was stomping up that ramp and very colorfully. I don't know how much language we can use on this, but very colorfully said, I am never coming back to this flipping racetrack, ever flipping again.
Right.
It was just, poor guy did not complete a lap, but then, later on he came back and had some really decent performances, but that just shows you again, all of the emotion that goes into it. And again, Ricky is a guy, you might look at him and assume he was a little bit more there for the fun aspects of the Chili Bowl than the actual seriousness of the racing, but not true. I don't even know what was going on. I never did find out the story of why those first several.
I think it had a steering issue. If I remember correctly, there was a steering issue with it or something. I don't remember quite either.
It was shockingly disastrous.
Yeah, when people got to put it in context for today, Ricky had won a lot of sprint car races leading into that year.
Yes.
Over the last 2 years, he had been super fast on the West Coast. And it was really kind of the prime of his career.
Yeah, and he had come back and run sprint week. He was,
big talent. So as we're kind of winding up our discussion, when you look at today, because Kimb is still an announcer today with a touring series, with the Tony Stewart's All-Star TQ series. So she does all those races, most of them in Indiana, all of them in Indiana. Anything in Ohio?
Maybe in 2021. In this upcoming race season, we've got a race scheduled in Richmond, Kentucky, and we might be at MRP, which is on the east side of Cincinnati. But so far, just Indiana. So
you still that's one of the nice things, especially with the traveling group. And I know how well you prepare. Kim used to also do all the Speedrome midget races, and at that time it was with Kenyon cars. And so many, Chris Wyndham is a graduate, Justin Allgaier is a graduate, and I'm just saying guys who people may recognize today. So many other very talented kids come through that. When you So my guess is you probably really enjoy that family aspect of that TQ series.
I do. And, one of the things that used to be so much fun back in the day, I mean, there were ups and downs to doing like the Neymar's Kenyon series thing.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure.
There were lots of ups and downs.
Right.
But, you have to remember, like, my introduction to the sport was through Larry Martz, and it was Larry and Tootie and Tate, and it was very much a family thing. Tony used to live with, Larry's family. And so, yes, it was that aspect. So when I was announcing those weekly Thursday races at the Speedrome, it was so much the family thing, like Brian and Tim Clausen working together,
Brian Clausen's the other one.
Yeah.
Graduated from that series.
Yep. Bob and Bobby East,
Right.
because at that time, Bob had the Lewis cars, and he was, pretty much the stuff in USAC midget racing.
For anybody who doesn't know Bob East, today, depending on when you become a fan, it's been a few years now since the 9 cars ran. But Bob East, boy, they won so much.
Oh, and
it was unbelievable.
The drivers that went through that series. But so there was like all of that. That was sort of like the pressure cooker, right?
Right.
But on Thursday night, it was, I don't know, it may not have been an open trailer, but it was just a small trailer. It was Bob and Janice and Bobby just going out and racing.
Right.
Very small, no frills, just, the three of them working together. And that's what a lot of those races were at the time. And so you still see that today,
especially
in the
TQ group. Yeah.
And it is one of the things that I really like. If you see a driver, then it's her dad is there with her, or wife, or whatever. And
right.
It's great having a series where Tony Stewart will come and race with us.
Right.
And those are the nights everybody has a lot of help.
You're right. Everybody wants to go to those. Those are the ones everybody wants to go to, right?
Yeah. And not just in the grandstands, right? But that's the night where everybody wants to work on the car. Hi, Kellen.
Kellen,
hi, Kimb. Good to see you.
You too. So, those are the nights where you've got all the pit help in the world, and everybody's, like right there. But it is, there is a certain, sort of camaraderie that comes when that you've got like your solid guys, and you're just going to go out and you're going to have a really competitive night, and then and come away having seen a great race. And that's another thing is
there's good racing there.
There's good racing.
There's good racing there.
It's usually all the way through the pack. So, and that's the thing.
And people have to understand how hard some of them guys work to get there. I mean, it's family operations.
Yep.
Almost completely through.
Well, and one of the things, and I have said this, you've heard me say this like a million times, but one of the things I really like about the TQs is that for some people, it's a destination series. It's as far as they're going to go. And at some point, drivers have made a decision that that's as far as they want to go because they have a job or a family or whatever. We obviously are not going to have like a national USAC footprint or anything like that ever, but it's a nice, full-bodied, very competitive series. But we also have the kids who it's the first time that they have raced with people who aren't their same age. It's the first time that they have just been
some are racing with men, some are racing with women. They're not 16 years old racing against 15, 14-year-olds. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. And if you're in karts or, lots of other series like that, then you could have been in like an age class group or whatever. And so, you get like last year, Rylan Gray, who was our rookie of the year, beat Tony Stewart and Ron Combs in a feature event.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Now,
that's a highlight, right?
it is.
And people don't know Ron Combs. Ron Combs has been a big time winner in that series for as far as I can remember.
Yeah. The Buddha.
That's right. The Buddha.
The Buddha. He is wise. He is very, Ron Combs is like a champion's champion. I mean, again, whew, after some races, I'm just going to start on the other end of the pits. I'm not even walking by him sometimes because he is super competitive. But if you need anything from wisdom to the smallest or largest part of a race car, Ron Combs is your guy. He wants the TQ series to be successful.
Right. He's always been champion of them.
Yeah.
So,
he has been a mentor to so many drivers.
So a couple last things here before we bring on the man, the myth, the legend, Kellen Conover. So a couple things. First, we'd be very remiss, since we're talking to an announcer, not to mention Brian Kapinski. And the booth you actually worked in is now called the Brian Kapinski Memorial Booth, I guess is what they're calling it.
Yes. Forever will be the Ryan Kapinski booth.
And for people who don't know, and I didn't know Brian that well, Brian was a champion of midget racing, a champion of the Philly Bowl, and he champion of Badger midget racing. For anybody who knows anything about Badger midget series, which is up in Wisconsin, I mean, the guy really dedicated his life to racing, midget racing in particular.
He went out of his way to not only, I mean, it's easy. There's so many great people from, like you say, Badger and just, USAC running through there and all that, but he would go out of his way to come and talk to you. I mean, I remember going and running, Sun Prairie, and I mean, he would make it a point to thank you for coming, because he just loved it. He just wanted everybody to take part in it.
Right. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And he did so much behind the scenes grunt work that nobody ever knows about.
Yep.
So I'm really glad that he's getting his due and being honored. He's a young man too. I mean, he wasn't very old.
No, but remember when National Midget Driver of the Year was kind of like a novel thing?
Right.
I mean, like the first couple of years, it was like, you did what? And, so like the whole formula thing, and you were like, okay. But, it is probably just due to Brian that when I started really going to a lot of midget races, like if you had to race against a Badger guy, it was like, oh, Randy Cook,
boy, that's right.
Or Dan Borse, who actually won that 2003 race. I mean, those guys, like it's easy to be like, oh, USAC guys are the uber competitive ones. Like when one of those guys would come to town, you were like, oh, because what you knew about them.
That Badger series, especially if you go play in their backyard at the Sun Prairie, and Kellen knows this personally.
Yeah.
Them guys come to play.
Yeah. But we would know about them because of what was written about them.
That's right.
Yep.
And that was written by Brian Kapinski. So these guys like loomed larger than life. I mean, so when you went to the Chili Bowl, if you were like pitted next to one of them, it was like, whoa, Badger guys. I mean, that is just part of the Brian Kapinski legend. And you can start anywhere you want and talk about his encyclopedic knowledge, the fact that he never forgot anything. I mean, just amazing.
So Aaron's got a question for us.
Well, first off, we have a special guest. I believe he's on now.
I think so. Do you see me?
David Land. The man, the myth, the legend. Oh my goodness.
What's up?
What's going on, David Land?
I have met exactly one of you, so I guess introductions are in order.
So we got the man with the wonderful hair is Scott Baue. So a little
I call it my mane of hair.
Yeah, it's definitely
lovely.
the mane.
That's what we call the flow. You got the flow.
Yeah, I got the flow. I was very inspired by Rico.
You just couldn't put yourself to buy one of his hats.
Right. Yeah, I wasn't going to do that. I was going to do it for real.
That's a cheaper alternative too.
Right.
So Scott's been involved in midget racing longer than me and you both have been alive. So the whole idea with this whole live stream was to bring people on that are a little more familiar with Chili Bowl than myself. So Scott, and he actually is a part owner of a midget team as well.
Yeah, my nephew, we don't run that much. He's older, he's got kids, he runs when he can. I have been lucky enough to do a lot of racing with Kellen Conover in the past. It depends on when the bills got paid. I guess I own part of those cars.
Right.
And then, but yeah, so to say I'm an owner today would not be completely truthful, but I still have a lot of input, I should say.
You mind introducing the other two, Scott?
Absolutely. So David, I don't know if you were listening or not. We have Kimb Stewart. Kimb is she's a dear friend, but she's also an announcer for currently full time for the Tony Stewart All-Star TQ Series. She's also the go-to announcer group, part of the go-to announcing group at Raceway Park for any events out there. And she's been doing this roughly 20 years, I guess now.
Wow. Yeah, I kind of picked up on that while I was kind of listening. I was like, she definitely has an announcer voice, so it makes sense. Yeah,
exactly.
And then
that's the first time I've been accused of having an announcer voice. I am sitting on my throne and I'm just getting my tiara ready right now.
I'm pretty sure I've watched something before with you talking, because that voice definitely sounds very familiar.
Well, you hear a lot in the background, like when they used to do those Xfinity races and stuff from Raceway Park, you would do the pit stuff, right?
My dog is barking. I'm sorry about that. But yes, when we would do what was at the time the Craftsman Truck Series and the Busch Series, I normally got to do like pre-race, so the big job there was like handing it off to the minister and the person who sang the national anthem. But then, yes, I was part of the team that announced those races. So you could hear me in the background a lot.
Absolutely.
And again, lots of driver interviews, which is probably one of my favorite parts.
And a lot of victory lane interviews and stuff, right?
Lots. Yeah. Some great victory lane interviews.
Right. Hey, who was your worst interview? No,
my worst. There are people that I am still.
I actually kind of know the answer to this question. That's what I said, but I don't want to put her on.
What is your answer? Because I'm not sure if your answer is my answer. My answer is a current TQ car owner.
Oh, really? Well, at the time you said it was Mike Wallace was one of your worst interviews too.
There were a couple, and honestly, not that many, but there were a couple of like really rough interviews in there. Sometimes they were like, or they'd look around, they're like, I'm not talking to you right now, and they would be like super sweet. And
it's funny and I'm sorry to jump in.
No, it's
okay. Kim's got a sister named Jen who actually worked on a lot of these midget team sprint car teams. She was actually, if anybody's been watching, Brent Beauchamp was running for a gentleman out of Georgia. Yeah, thank you. Good guy. And but she actually, when Brent started running sprint cars, Jen actually helped take care of all the equipment. But you guys have, not to kind of go down an awkward road, but being women, some of the few women around the sport, you guys really had to break a few barriers in some different ways.
Yeah, I'm not sure I've ever really thought of myself that way as like a breaking barrier kind of person, because I look at the amazing things that have happened and are happening. I mean, for example, you mentioned Raceway Park, which is now Lucas Oil Raceway. The last night before the 500, I got to work it with Pat Sullivan.
Absolutely. Yeah.
This May. And Courtney Crone just absolutely blew me away.
Yeah, great.
She's an amazing driver. She is a fantastic interview, and she has everything all together. And my favorite part, she did great in the whole race, but they had this weird qualifying kind of setup where you could go out twice. You could go out and qualify again, but if you did, you ditched your time.
Right.
She went out and qualified, and she was 5th quick. Now, and of course, I'm up in the booth with all the guys, USAC, officials and everybody, and they're all going, no way anybody is going to take up this challenge. And I'm like, okay, but these are race car drivers, so, but you could do it, like all the way up through the line, and a couple of people did. Courtney was 5th, and I was like, no way anybody's going out after this. No way, no way. Courtney's 5th. She ditches her time and goes out and blisters that track and moved up 2 spots. She started 3rd. It was absolutely amazing. And so to see women be that competitive, to me, is exciting because they've got the talent, they've got the equipment, they've got the knowledge, they've got everything they need really to completely break through. I've never felt like I was really in that kind of position, but I do know that when I started, I heard a lot from people about, you know, it's only been a couple of years since we let you people in the pits. They would tell me about signs that they used to have that rhymed with pits that were not, you know, anatomy that rhymed with pits that were not allowed.
Careful.
I'm being very descriptive without saying.
Strict rules.
I'm being descriptive without, you know, whatever. But I would be told that. But then I have been lucky because there have always been people who have never let that be a barrier. You're one of them, Scott. You befriended me. I didn't befriend you. I was just like, who is that guy who knows all that stuff about racing? You know, Pat Sullivan and Brad Dickinson, when I first started announcing, helped. You know, when I was at Lawrenceburg, which was, you know, super intimidating for me, super intimidating because I just went down there. I'd never been to the track before. I replaced a guy that had been the announcer there forever, had gotten fired the week before.
Right.
You know, it was like a horrible situation. And all of a sudden there I was like announcing everything, you know, not just sprint cars, which I was semi-comfortable with, but, you know, modifieds and, you know, a bunch of other stuff. But there were always people there, Kellen Conover.
That's right. Was always the highlight of my week, getting to talk to you. Always meant we had a good week going.
That's right. That's what you're cashing those big checks in mini.
Right.
But there have always been people who, you know, I mean, some people just don't like female announcers for whatever reason. And, you know, that's your choice. I don't like all announcers, you know, like sometimes I'm listening, does not matter what the sport is. I'll just be like, I could do better than that. True or not, we don't know. But whether it was fans or other announcers or drivers like Kellen, and I'll tell you what, at Lawrenceburg, it was the modified guys who were like, this is our announcer. This is our announcer, because I treated them exactly the way I treated sprint car guys. I didn't know any different. I still don't, you know? So it's like, okay. So that was always something that I had going for me. So if there was like that whole, oh, her voice is so horrible, or it's too high, or she talks too fast, or, you know, she's not from a racing family, so, you know, she doesn't know, you know, an axle from a steering wheel. And in the beginning, I probably didn't. You know, there were always people who were just like, anyone who likes the sport that much, let's give her a chance. So I've forever been appreciative of that, but I remain hopeful that the sport continues to diversify, not just with women drivers, but with, you know, I just think, again, it's so amazing, and everything that has to go into it, into a night to make it, you know, something that you're happy with at the end of the evening. I just want everybody to have the opportunity to see it. If you don't like it, that's fine, walk away. But if, like me, you walk in and go, this is the most amazing thing I have ever seen, then I just want people to be welcome in it. And I think for the future of the sport, it needs to continue
I agree.
to diversify, you know,
Absolutely.
I mean, so I'll be quiet now.
Hey, one more question before you go quiet. Who you got for tonight?
Oh my gosh, it's so hard. I don't know. I mean, I'm probably, you know, it feels like you're not even trying very hard if you go Christopher Bell or Rico Abreu, you know, and I hate
I don't see how you don't pick from that group. I mean, there's I had a list of 10 guys before it started. That's still basically my list of 10 guys, and I've got 4 real standouts to that.
Yeah. So, I mean, and like you said, like you never go, oh, Kyle Larson, but he hasn't looked quite as smooth this year.
He hasn't been Carl. And that started kind of in California. At the end of the midget season, he wasn't. They didn't seem as in sync, and they had some motor issues and stuff like that. So that may have been it. He looked a lot better, and I don't know how the pole shuffle worked out, but he looked a lot better in the pole shuffle, I felt.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's Justin Grant, who oh my gosh, just love to watch Justin Grant race. I mean,
yeah, boy, he's really turned it up too, ain't he?
He's just one of those guys where it's like, put him in anything and I will just watch him. And he's almost one of those guys that, and this is kind of how I always felt about Tony Stewart and just a very few other guys. Like if you put him in a blank car and didn't know it was him, when he went out to qualify, you'd be like, yeah, that one's Tony.
Yeah.
I mean,
right. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Tony's worth time. I mean, you could, more times than not, you could stick him in somebody else's car, and there's a couple tenths there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Invisible, and tenths don't, you don't think you can see a tenth or two on the racetrack, and you can see it. I mean, it's visible.
Yeah, and still, when he comes back to run, with us, TQ guys, it doesn't matter. He could climb in a completely different car, and you would still, in qualifying go, that one's Tony. It
right.
just, it's so distinctive. So you never want to say, like a Justin Grant's not going to win or Kyle Larson's not going to win because, even if they're off, they're still so freaking good.
Right. Yeah.
I would like to see Kyle Cummins run really, really well.
Yeah. How about that? How about that run the other night? How about Kyle Cummins? And the people who didn't go watch him run at Hopstad, they're starting to see. And Kyle Cummins is starting to really come into his own. I mean, it's been coming for a few years.
Well, and I mean, Kyle's been so good for so long, but it's just, he's finally, I mean, it was over a decade ago, that it was just like, man, he's going to take the next step. And just for whatever reason, I know there were some injuries, a long time ago and some things like that, just kind of plateaued for a little bit. But yeah, I mean, they have really gone up. Yeah.
So, Kim, I'm going to kind of change focus here a little bit to Kellen. And the reason why I want to do that is because Kellen Conover has actually made an A main on a preliminary night, Chili Bowl.
I have.
Now, yes. I would never say that was one of the highlights of your career. The highlight of your career, because you've had some good wins.
We have.
And that sort of thing. But I remember that night. I was pretty proud because we're all kind of a small group, kind of work together, and I was pretty proud that night. Just to see where you had come from, where you got it. And Kellen can drive. I mean, Kellen's another guy. When I watch race, when he drove a lot, I said, man, now that guy can wheel a midget. This guy, you can see it. There was something about. You can carry the attitude of the car, it just, you have that, you didn't have always the money to compete at the higher level, but, I always felt like, man, if we had you in equal equipment, Kellen could be right there with him with enough races.
Well, and, I mean, I never felt that way per se, you always think you're good, but, I also was in the era of just some ridiculously good drivers, when I was first trying to hop into a midget, we would try to come over and I would say sneak over to run with Power I, and you were still having to compete with, Brad Kuhn, Mike Hess, the Signer boys, Brad Loyette, these guys that, weren't on a USAC tour, but were just amazing to watch. And I mean, I still remember my very first time in a midget was Little Belleville, and it was a complete culture shock because I came from having so much success in between go-karts and mini sprints. We won a lot of features between Lawrenceburg and places like that in Indiana, and came over and to hop into it at a place like Little Belleville and then run against those guys. Yeah, I mean, it definitely was it put you in your place, and made you say, it was one of those, but it was a good thing because, I've always been a firm believer in you need to go race against the best competition you can, always, no matter what you're doing, because if you're not doing that, then you're not being fair to yourself. I mean, it just, and I also always felt like a little bit of, it was also more a little bit, I didn't have to worry about them. I could concentrate on myself more. And I don't have to, I'm not worried about, Jerry Coons Jr. out on the track, or, Brian Clausen, or guys like that, they're going to be fine. You can drive your race and let it work itself out, type of a deal. So,
right. You had a big, we were talking about Sun Prairie a while ago. Now you took, at that time, which is a pretty outdated motor, and went up there and you won that heat race up there. I forget who all was in that heat race, but it was a stacked heat race.
Yeah, well, it was. I know Brian was, for sure, because that was that was a big one. I mean, talking about biggest nights of your career, but I mean that's definitely up there, because again, it was. I'm pretty certain that it was. I think Tracy was in there as well. I had Tracy Hunt, Brian Clausen. There was like 3 or 4 guys that there was absolutely no reason I should have won that race. I mean, in all fairness, and it just we had a great run. Started I started on outside front row, I believe, and Sun Prairie is just it's just a big fast joint, and it's just a lot of fun. And it was one of those you just to drive it, you just put it on the floor and you went with it, and just kind of went where the car took you.
So anybody has Flow Racing, you can find USAC midget shows from Sun Prairie.
Yep.
Man, there's that one video of Rico just riding one out there. Whew.
Yeah.
That was vicious.
That
was a vicious crash.
It was. That's the bad part about Sun Prairie. It would do that.
Yeah, it's big. Like you go big when you go big at Sun Prairie. Yep. And unfortunately, that's where we lost Kevin Doty.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But so you can find a midget race that Jeff Gordon won there in 1990. I watched it like a month ago. So anybody's got Flow, you can pick up that USAC 24/7. I believe that's what it was in, but but whatever.
You can still search, I think, through there. Yeah.
Sun Prairie. I always said, if aliens come to Earth and they said, "Hey, you got to take me to the best midget racetrack in the country," we're driving this. We're driving to Sun Prairie, Wisconsin, and not even thinking twice.
It's awe inspiring. There's so many things that harken back to the old days, but getting to pit on the infield, and the bleachers built into the hill there around the track, and
you had that bar. You got that bar off too.
Yeah,
everybody got that bar.
Yeah.
Which was shades of Little Springfield, which I know you didn't go to Little Springfield, but
but Macon still has. Macon has off of turn 4 there. So
right.
But I mean, it is. It's just a beautiful setting, and the folks up there. I mean, they are race fans. I mean, they love it, and
that's right.
Yeah, I mean, it just. It made you excited to run in front of them. So
I years ago, and David's gonna like this because I've heard him mention this guy's name. So years ago, I worked for Pepsi Nationals.
Yep.
It was the Pepsi Nationals. They sponsored, however that worked. I worked for PFS, which is part of at the time was part of Taco Bell. This is the early 90s. I wrote on a box, I said, go Critter Malone. And Critter and I we raced together for years. I raced together. Me and Critter got dirt on each other. You know what I'm saying? We got some good stories. And, and he was like a brother in a lot of ways. And so he said, he won a heat race, and like 2 weeks later, we were talking about it. And I think that's even when they would give away a case of beer when you'd win a heat race. Remember that? Miller beer.
Oh yeah.
And he said, man, I had the strangest thing in Victory Lane. This woman come up to me and said that I got I got your box, and I just wanted to say I was rooting for you. And I was like, what? He goes, yeah. She said she worked at like a Taco Bell, and she got my box. So that just shows you how close knit that deal really was up there.
Yeah, it absolutely was. And I mean, those people, I remember. And Brian was part of this, Brian Kopinski that we mentioned earlier.
That's right.
They would call you up, and they would want to know, what can we do to help you come back? Like, do you need a hotel? Do you need, what can we, do you guys need meals? Do you need this or that? And I mean, and they would, and it was one of those that, I always felt guilty accepting. I was like, I just want to be here. But,
Right.
they go out of their way to make you, it just, yeah.
Yeah. A good friend of mine, a good friend of our family had passed away last year. Really, really sad to me was Frank Jufrey from Jufrey Brothers Cranes, which Dave and Aaron know Jufrey Brothers from. That's the flatbed crane at the Speedway. That we use at the 500. So that flatbed crane that comes out that they use is Jufrey Brother crane, and they load the cars up with. And Frank, longtime supporter of auto racing, IndyCar racing, and all that. But Brian, I think Brian would hit Frank up for money every once in a while. I think they would use it for stuff like that.
Sure. Yeah.
Exchange for sponsor. That that's what we were talking about. At this level of sport, that's what you got to do. Now, something else I want to talk about real quick, and I realize I jump around, is right now they're must be part of the Donnie Ray Crawford family.
Yeah.
Out there, and anybody that wants to know why the race is 55 laps, it's because of Donnie Ray Crawford, and it's very sadly, and people can Google it. I don't want to get into it.
Right.
There was a very sad incident. He was locked. Was he locked into the A main?
Oh, I can't remember if it was locked in or if he had even ran his preliminary night yet.
I think he had ran.
I'm not certain.
I don't remember, so I don't want to tell stories out of school. I'm pretty sure he ran, and they lived so close. He went home. There was a family incident, and unfortunately, Donnie passed away. And he lives in Oklahoma. And the reason why this race is 55 laps now because that was his car number.
His number. Yep.
And there's a lot
he actually was the first person. He won drillers at the shootout, and then had the best rookie finish because he hopped in one of Keith's cars and
I didn't know that.
And I believe he might have still have the best finish for a rookie in the A main. I believe it's something to that effect. Yeah.
And in Donnie Ray Crawford's life, unfortunately, ended very short. Yep. But in his life, he saved another driver that's been running this weekend from a horrible fire. Her name was Harley White.
Yep.
And she was burnt horribly in a micro crash. Right? It was a micro crash.
Yes.
And Donnie ran out on the racetrack and pulled her from the race car.
Yep.
And unfortunately, we lost a great human being. While he was not a friend of mine, the stories about him were always glowing. And it's great to see him. There's a lot of these little tributes you see now at the Chili Bowl, since it's so old, so much older. The race is 34 years old now, and they've really, is that right? 34?
Yeah, it would be
87. So it's 87. Yeah. So Vogler won in 87. So whatever. And so at least they have these small little traditions, these small little things that really I think add a lot to it. For me personally, I think it's great that it's not so much where they forget about their past.
Agreed.
They hold on our past. In fact, anybody hasn't been watching, but it's going to watch, you'll see that cameraman at different spots of the racetrack. And isn't that kind of a tribute to a gentleman?
So he is entering. He's entering turn one. There's a cameraman that they have like
there's one there. And there's one I think there's one on a Jersey barrier on the back stretch.
Oh, I haven't seen him on the back stretch. Yeah, the one on the front stretch. I believe he just passed away. I believe that's Dylan Duvall.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
but let's get back to you in terms of Chili Bowl night, and you had run good there the year before, and you kind of gave away a Saturday night prelim race win.
Right.
And I never reminded you of that.
Never. You're always good about letting things die.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I never
you never bring anything up ever. So right. Yeah, I always appreciate that about you.
And then we come back to next year, and you were good. You were good from the first Hot Lap group.
Yeah. No, we did. We had a great car.
Kind of take us through that night. What you can remember of it?
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those
because I think you won another race that night, right? Didn't you win a heat race or a qualifier?
I won the heat race, yeah, and
that's what I thought.
we didn't get a great draw, and and that's the thing that so many people don't understand about Tulsa is it's such its own organism compared to any other race night, because you go out during the summer, you are not going to go run against 65 to 70 cars in a night. It doesn't happen. You just don't see that, not speaking of even the level of competition. So we got out there though, and we knew we had a decent car. We were pretty balanced, but we kind of got a rough draw, so we ended up starting like we were either second or third on it, and got lucky and had a great start, and ended up winning the heat race, and so grabbed a couple of passing points, which there are just primo. I mean, that's the name of the game. There is you're more concerned about it's where you start and where you finish more than you really are if you win or not. Like
right.
So yeah, we had that, and then got into a qualifier that put us straight into a qualifier, and again got real lucky and went out and ran well in the qualifier as well, and so that locked us straight into the feature. And we were back a little ways. I want to say that we started at about like 18th to 20th on the night, and it was one of those went into it after the qualifier and knowing we were locked in. It's such a vacuum of relief, because you're so built up and you're so on edge, and you're so worried, and then you get to that and it's like, okay, like it doesn't matter going forward, the rest of the night's just gravy. Like, enjoy it, because there's a lot of really good drivers out there that haven't even made a prelim night. I mean, let's be honest.
That's
right. It's such tough sledding. And again, the myriad of disciplines that are out there, because you're not just racing against guys who do the same thing that you do. There's guys from every walk of motorsports that have decided they want to dabble in it, and they're there, and so you've got that little chip on your shoulder, like, hey, you're coming into our place, like I want to make sure that I represent well. But then you've got to tack in all the guys that are great across this entire country, that are just legends and midgets that you're competing against. So yeah, but yeah.
We're watching that, and these things mean a lot more to me today than they did. And I think the first time I took a car, there was 96. Watching even some I never participated in, even like the Parade of Flags, and stuff like that. That stuff really, the older I get, the more it means to me to see that. I think it's because you see the tradition. It's a lot like the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. With me, their traditions, because there's a comfort in that, and to see it, and you still see all these different people represented, and you see that it still means something.
Yeah.
Right. And to me, that means a lot to me. While Chris won't race, Chris will be done racing next couple of years most likely, and then we'll be done. I mean, unless I go out and buy a car and start hiring drivers, which I'm laughing. Kellen knows why I'm laughing. Unless I do that, we're for the most part, we're done racing.
Hey, Scott.
Yeah.
I was going to say David Lane will probably be available to drive a midget.
I'll tell you what,
you're my agent.
I'll tell you what, David Land, if I put together, these guys we've been talking about something kind of behind the scenes, nothing fancy or anything like that. But if I build a car, I'll let you take some laps in it.
Oh my God.
If I do, I don't know. I've watched your videos.
It's lucky for us that Scott has such low standards. I mean, that's what I'm thankful for. Like,
so a few years
that
ago,
amazing head of hair, like I'm thankful to even be in his proximity.
Yeah, we're dealing with the yin and yang of hair right now.
Right. Absolutely.
So Kellen drove, actually, the last time you drove a midget was I believe, right? Was one of our cars, or I say
It
our
was.
car.
It was your car. Yeah.
It was actually my nephew's car. That's not fair for me to say our.
Yes. Yeah. Chris's car.
And hell of a crash. Beautiful crash.
It was. Yeah.
So you were racing with Baston, right? Was it Baston you were running with?
It was Derek Hagar, and it was a Keith Coons car. It may have been. I'm totally blanking at that point. Yeah.
This was a D2 car.
It was.
And it was a D2 car with the Ecotech, so it's very underpowered. We took it to Duke Coin. My nephew was running his Esslinger, I think it was, and then you had that D2 car, and we thought, you know what, Kellen could drive. And actually, to be fair to Kellen, there was actually a technical issue with it we didn't realize with the motor at the time, but Kellen's just wheeling it for everything it's got. Whatever that thing had, he's coming down the front straightaway, and I just thought to myself, there's no way he's making this corner. I'm standing 1 and 2, and there's no way.
It was an unfortunate event that 3 and 4 was such a confidence booster, and 1 and 2 was its opposite because
you had him set up. You had
we had a great run off of 4, and I mean it was setting up to pass 2 cars, getting down into 1 and 2, and
man, I knew I was like the cushion's not near good enough down there.
No, it was not. Yeah,
you missed the cushion and you hit that gate. And it sounded like a bomb went off. It was. I'm standing right there, and I said, "There is no way." I'm watching this thing. I see you set it up just past the flag stand. There's no way. No way. But you know what? That's
part of it.
My thought of it every night taking race cars to the racetrack is I want to bring the driver home. I don't necessarily care about the race car. I mean, only like my brother and I raced together for numerous years. Obviously, you know Bill very well. Kim knows Bill very well, but and we would argue from time to time. But my most concern was, a race car is a race car, right? I mean, it's money. I don't have a lot of money. I've never had a lot of money. We get by with Bill's intelligence on how to make stuff work and finding good deals. And I had the parts business, which we could buy stuff a little cheaper and, and all those types of things. So, but my main concern is always the driver. And once you were okay, I didn't care. I mean, whatever. It's a rear axle. It's radius rods. It's a bird cage.
Yep, exactly.
Your shocks.
Yeah, my shocks, right?
Your shocks. The most expensive part of the whole deal was your shocks. So I didn't care about that.
Exactly.
Speaking of shocks, and we were talking about adjustments earlier. I don't know if you heard it or
I missed it. Yeah, sorry.
So, the difference between say these, like an Indy car, you got the weight jacker. I don't know. There may be a couple other adjustments in an Indy car today. I don't remember. But midgets, you have shocks. And not the World of Outlaws. They don't allow that. World of Outlaws, I don't think allow adjustable shocks.
I believe that they still are no cockpit adjustments.
About the only cars that allow adjustable shocks are the midgets. I don't even think the USAC sprint cars do they?
Well, they did, and they went away from them, and I thought they were coming back. But maybe they have. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not up on the sprint car rules.
So kind of go through when you're sitting in that car. And you're under yellow or maybe running. I mean, some guys are good enough. They can make that adjustment while you're running. If Robinson's good enough to flip Sammy off the other night while he's coming through 4, he's good enough to adjust the shocks, So
in that discussion, I'll show because it's hanging on the wall behind me, but this is one of my favorite pictures that a gentleman caught of me out in Kansas one time, but talking about, and I mean, this is what you get into, unfortunately, at times. So if it's too much of a glare there, but I mean, this was in the middle of a heat race in Beloit, Kansas, and
are you reaching up and just
you're cranking on the knob, and that's just like you say, ideally you don't want to do it on the fly. You want to be able to think about what you're doing, but at the same time, there's other times where you get in a race that goes green, white, checkered. There you've got no choice. You really have to dial on it. And yeah, I mean, the shock adjustments, it's tough because we've gotten so far in a level that, everything is so even. You've got guys that are buying, you can walk in and you can buy the exact same thing that somebody else is running that's on the USAC National Tour. Anybody can go buy a Spike. Anybody can go buy an SR11. Anybody can do any of that you want to. They do not have a prerequisite.
They just the only prerequisite is, hey, does your checks cash?
Absolutely. Is it paid for? That's all we care about.
I don't even care if your checks cash. Does that credit card have enough?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And so this stuff, everybody's on kill and everybody's getting this equipment that's on the same level, and that's what it comes down to. We're in a game of inches in this day and age. I mean, it's so on top of each other, and it's tough. And I laughed because like last night they were bringing out, and I believe even Jason McDougall mentioned earlier on his run that was amazing today.
Yeah, what a shame, right?
Right. Yeah. It ended horribly, but he joked about how in between one race, they kind of asked him what he could do, and he's like, well, not much besides drive it, because Bob won't let me have any cockpit adjusters, and so many guys, so many owners. Yeah, but Bob did it. Bob. They've actually mentioned a couple of nights through the week here about how Keith took him away and would only let certain drivers have them because he got tired of guys adjusting yourselves out. And it is, right. It's so easy to do. And as a driver, you never want to think that you're going backwards because of yourself. Like, you always think that you're driving it to the peak level that it can be driven. It's not me. It's something's wrong with the car.
This piece of junk car. It don't work.
Yeah. It's just,
It has nothing to do with the fact I missed the cushion by a foot and a half.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, but the shocks, they've came so far in so many years, but you have rebound and compression adjustable shocks, and so you can tie the front end down, you can fly the front end if you need to. I always preferred to run a single adjustable on the three corners. Then I had a double adjustable on the right rear, which allowed you to do both of them. And right. It just, sometimes fantastic. Other nights, it's like, why did I let myself do that? And again, when you get into a tight battle like that, you think you're doing the right thing, and then it's like, and you can't get that back. So yeah.
So David, I kind of want to bring you in for a second.
Sure.
So as you watch, and you have a lot of knowledge. I have a lot of respect for the fact you watch a lot of different varied types of racing, IndyCar, sports car. It's a lot. I call it engineer racing in a way because it's so engineer driven. As someone who really enjoys that type of thing, when you watch a midget race, and I know you went to a wing sprint car show last year, I believe.
Yeah.
And as you watch, like, say, the midget race at Chili Bowl, what's like a takeaway for you?
It's everything that the like top level racing used to be. It's got the tech, and you say engineering racing, but you have more technical variety, chassis, engines, all that stuff is here. So I love the midgets. I think the midgets are just the coolest thing to me. It really in American racing, it's such a unique thing. And like you said, it's so driver dependent, but at the same time, the mechanics aren't completely hands off either. I mean, it really is a total team effort and kind of old school, what kind of Indianapolis or Le Mans or Daytona used to be,
Right. I agree with that. And it really is a thing where, if a guy doesn't realize the top's come in, or he doesn't realize the top's chopped up, ultimately at the end of at this Chili Bowl, whoever wins it, driver made a race-winning decision during the race.
Yeah.
It's not, and I love pavement racing, I do, but it's not always about hitting your marks in here. It's about changing your marks.
Right.
I think the perfect example of that. Yeah, you and I mean, Scott and I talk, almost 24/7. We're texting each other, but he and I were talking earlier.
Man, you remember when Rooster used to work that train?
Oh yeah, it was 24/7. Yes,
24/7. I had phone bills because I didn't have I had phone bills of like $700. I go through there and it's just all you and Rooster, and we're just talking Rooster.
Well, and that was back whenever I used to travel for work a lot more. So I might be on the West Coast, and next thing I know, it's like 10 o'clock my time, and I'm getting a phone call from the two of them, like, what's going on, So yeah.
We'd go racing, and I used to with Kimb and Jen and sometimes Tim Clausen and we'd all be at different places. And I wanted to find out what happened here, what happened
exactly.
there.
Exactly.
And get the rundowns and who did what. And then, but Kellen, Kent Schmidt is Rooster. Kent actually is part owner in the sprint car team that Chase Stockton runs, and Paul Nienheiser is going to run again. They're running for the championship.
Davis Brothers team.
And we spent, thousands of hours just talking.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Just an incredible man. It's what could I do? What do you think? And Kent's really become kind of my go-to as I stepped away from the sport. What we always call 2009 Scott. Pre-2009 Scott raced a lot. After 2009 Scott doesn't race as much. But he's really kind of like my thoughts and ideas, and we constantly just go off each other.
Yeah.
And it's actually been one of the pleasures, of my last 20 years. This is something Kellen, and I've told you before, I always feel bad for Bill because I wasn't as good when Bill raced as when I got a lot better at working in cars after we got done racing.
Sure.
There's still nights I'll lay in that bed and I'll think, man, if I'd just done this, if I would, and there's some things, there's things that just still eat at me to this day.
Yeah.
And that's what those phone calls kind of always were about. And I've always appreciated you guys talking to me, listening to me, with your inputs and
absolutely.
I always love helping you guys,
Yeah, that's what was always so great was to have guys like you and Bill in your pocket, to be able to do stuff. Because, again, from a guy from Sumner, Illinois, who there's no midget racing, that no one even knows what it is. I mean, I raced for ever and out of home, and no one even knew that I raced, and had no idea. And we would run Lawrenceburg every weekend, or we would be going all these places, and no one had any idea what we were doing. But to be able to go to guys like you and get all that experience, it was such a big deal. But talking, as I say, you and I, we're sitting here watching these races, race by race, and calling out like what different guys are doing, and seeing something on a car, and it's like, what are they thinking here? And just like earlier, I sat there and I called it, and it was probably 2 races before he actually did end. I was like, man, he messed up there. J-Mac just couldn't get rolling, and then he got passed by a car. And this goes back to your statement of how the driver's going to make a race winning decision. And he took, he changed his entry into 1 and 2, and he was entering onto the cushion, but he turned down. It was a really interesting line, especially for Tulsa, because
the car ain't that big.
Yeah, and so he would rotate that car, and he would shoot down towards the center, and it was a really, most people, you might do that, but you're going to get to the bottom because you're trying to hook that moisture coming off of the bottom side. He wasn't really doing that though. He was driving straight through the center of the track and really building the speed in a straight line. Yeah. And, that was, and I even said, I was like, man, that's on me. I was like, I did not see that. I did not see that part of the track opening up because everyone was on the bottom or on the top at that point. So I think you're 100% right.
Yeah. So Aaron, it only goes 8:30. I was worried about how we were going to, everybody wants to be the man, but not everybody wants to do the work to become the man. That's right. You used to have that framed, right? Yeah. Aaron needs to ask us some closing questions. I was worried about how we're going to fill 2 hours, and I feel we could have went 4 or 5. I love, I truly love the life I've led in racing. I'm truly appreciative. I'm truly appreciative of all my fans, all my friends.
Well, we're your fans. I mean, let's be honest. We're your fans.
We're definitely your fans.
Of all my friends and all the fans, because it's not fun without the fans. I don't think. I'm not a person that says, boy, I'd sure like to go race in front of no one. I mean,
right.
That doesn't excite me. You know, when you were running the Copper World, when you had all those fans, when you were running the Chili Bowl and there's 15,000 people, or when we used to run the fairgrounds with the Silver Crown car, 15, 20,000 people. I'm telling you, now we're doing some big boy racing.
Right.
You know, because the drivers, they know it, the crews know it. I mean, I don't mean to take anything away from any small racetrack. I go to every small racetrack I can go to, but there is something about when you walk in some of those facilities, man, it just it's
electric. Yeah.
Absolutely electric. So Aaron, I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, you're good. So we had 2 questions. Well, actually 1, but we'll close out with another one as well. So someone asked, who do you think the best midget driver is in the last 20 years? So I'm thinking we can go around as that question, and also we'll ask everyone who their pick is for tonight.
That 20 years question, that's a wide door.
That's a big one. Yeah.
Because if we're going 30, I'm telling you, I'm going to throw Jeff Gordon in there at 30 years.
We can go 30.
Jeff Gordon is one of the most, I mean, people forget today how he now Jeff did have some you couldn't, like, they had great equipment when
Raleigh stuff.
At the time the sport was transitioning, they had great equipment.
Yeah.
So motors and stuff, you know, but Jeff did some electric things in a midget. I tell you, I don't know how you say Kyle Larson isn't probably the best. You know, really, it's a pick 'em. Christopher Bell, Kyle Larson, Jeff Gordon. If we're going back 30 years, if we're going back 40 years, Rich Vogler. You know, I mean, we can play this game all day long. I mean, we can make these arguments. I'm sorry, but go ahead with your pick, Kellen.
Oh, man. You know, I mean, I think, you know, 20 years, like you say, that's rough. But again, I think you're remiss to not. I've got to put Kyle and Christopher Bell, you know, kind of right there.
I'll tell you what, we talked about another man the other night, and he don't have a ton of wins, but Ricky Stenhouse, Stewart was absolutely, you know, and that came when Tracy Hines got hurt, and Ricky got that deal. And I'm telling you, there's a guy that made the most of an opportunity.
I think he's one of the most underrated people to ever hop into a midget, and to this day he still, I mean, just what he did last night, I mean, but yeah, he is amazing. And you know, but I think, you know, for me, as having driven against them, I think, yeah, you've got to throw, you know, Kyle and Christopher, what they've done. I feel like they get a little bit of a step up just because of the levels that they've reached.
And they're newer.
But, you know, Brian Clausen. I mean,
Brian Clausen. I mean, that's a given.
He was amazing. I mean, you know, there's nights that I'm standing there in a driving suit. You know, I'm supposed to be pushing out, and I'm watching from strapped in my car, and I'm like, how is this guy doing this? I mean, you know, he was incredible to watch. So yeah, I mean, I think that those 4. I would pay any amount of money to watch those 4 go toe to toe in a midget race. You know?
I agree. Kim, do you have a pick?
Well, I mean, you know that I'm going to throw Brian Clausen's name into that mix because, you know, I started watching him race when he was like 11 and a half.
12, kidney cars, and, you know, he ran micros before that, and that's when, wasn't long after that they started coming in shop. You know, I still got an autograph card from when he was like 14.
Yeah. So, you know,
he was at McGillies or wherever it was.
He just, I mean, he was in that elite air of, you know, there's nothing he can't drive. And he just, if you saw him make a mistake once, it never happened again. He might make a different one, but, you know, I mean, he learned and retained and applied so much. And I see that in particularly Kyle Larson and Christopher Bell. But, you know, when I think back to the days when I started, you know, because it's been about that same time frame when I started really watching midget racing. I mean, if I could see Dave Darlin and Jason Leffler going at it, I was having a fabulous night.
Great choices. Yeah.
You know, Dave Darlin in a midget on dirt. Oh my gosh. And then, you know, also, you know, the technical guys, the super technical guys who kind of excelled on pavement. Tracy Hines and Dave Steele.
Oh,
you know, I
Kenny
mean,
Irwin too, and we got to throw Kenny Irwin in there.
yeah,
absolutely. You know, like Johnny Vance told me this story once about he replaced the bumper on one of Tracy's cars, and he had this aluminum bumper, and he put a steel one on it or something of that nature. And Tracy had scaled the car. It made like 2 pounds difference.
Yep.
And Tracy had scaled the car and, and could not figure out why that 2 pounds was changed and was just going bonkers all night long. And Johnny's just sitting in the corner laughing and laughing and laughing. And Dave Steele didn't want to let him change it back before they went to IRP the next weekend.
Tracy was in shop. Ted and Tracy, we know pretty well. And Tracy either was in the shop or when Bill Race was going and helping Tracy. Tracy was telling some story about he was sitting an inch higher in the car, and he could tell by the way the car was acting, he was sitting an inch higher in his midget or something like that. Now, Tracy
knew. Tracy had a number for his throttle pedal throw. He knew exactly the measurement that he wanted his throttle pedal. And he told me that one night, and I'm just like, all right.
He knew exactly how much throw. He knew how much throw he had to have so he could control the throttle accurately. If Tracy was here, he could probably tell the story a whole lot better, a whole lot differently.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely.
But Tracy, man, nobody's met a guy. Tracy Hines is a unique individual.
He should have been a mechanical engineer. Absolutely should have gone to college to be a mechanical engineer.
And he's had so much success, running ThorSport.
Yeah, I mean, he is, but, he even told me, I did an interview with him once at IRP, and he was like, I am so glad these, whichever cars they were, I don't remember if they were the Baby Grands or if they were some other thing that we had running that night. He was so excited because he said, the temperature is supposed to go down 10 degrees between now and when our feature is on the track. And with those tires that are on those cars, they're going to do this to the track and blah, 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 and I'm going to win this sucker. Well, the temperature didn't change quite enough, and he was so mad at the end of the race, but he is so technical, and it was just amazing. If you could do an interview with him, I always loved interviewing him before a race, even though you're not supposed to necessarily interview the people you think are going to win, but it was always so much fun because he would not necessarily on purpose tell you things like that, but then he would want to know if he had a good feeling about it, he would want you to know that he was going to win, and then you would know why.
True. Well, a man makes a T-shirt that says "fastest man alive" after he set the track record at Winchester. What are you going to expect, right?
Right.
No, what's so funny is his one of his big adversaries is Brian Gerster, and guess who owns the track record? I still believe to this day at Winchester, and that's Brian Gerster.
Yeah.
And Brian Gerster ran 150 at Bristol in a wing sprint car.
Yeah.
Yes. Brian Gerster is a badass. He just he absolutely is.
Undercover undercover, especially when it comes to pavement. There's another pavement guy.
Yeah.
He's won a lot on dirt, but boy, you put Brian in a pavement car. Ooh.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think Aaron or David, your midget picks for
best of all time or best in the last 20 years?
I can't say Buddy Lazier on this one.
I can't say Buddy Lazier. I know that's my go-to answer. Well, I'll tell you this. I'm smart enough to know these days to kind of not go against the guys who have done it. So Kellen, I think you're absolutely right. I think a guy like a Christopher Bell or a Kyle Larson, you've raced against those. Right now, and I think, I guess I'll give my answer to the second question. I think Kyle Larson's going to win tonight. So I think and something that Kim said is the field. I can't believe how deep this field is. I watched my buddy.
Yeah, it's a lot deeper than people realize too.
Yeah.
The casual fan doesn't understand how deep this field is.
Yeah.
Well, I watched my friend Racing Nation TV's video kind of talking about just the star drivers, and it goes on for like 20 minutes. It's like, and like you guys said, there's 80 guys there. It's unbelievable. And it's amazing to think that like people like Chase Elliott, NASCAR Cup champion, he's not a bad driver, not even anywhere close to the A main,
I think you have to take, people want to talk about Chase, he's obviously an amazing driver because look at his success on a road course. Throw the ovals out. If he can have that much success at that, you can drive a race car,
Did you guys hear his interview he did earlier this week? absolutely blew me
Yeah.
away when he was talking
Yeah.
about how much fun he was having there, but how quick you have to make every decision in a midget race. How, he's like, I'm used to like Daytona, and you've got the races are forever long.
Right.
The track is so huge. And he was like, at everything you have like a fraction of a second. And that made me a Chase Elliott fan for life. Doesn't matter how much I liked his dad when he was racing. I was like, that's the guy, because he knows.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's man, it's just hard to describe, right, Kellen?
It is.
Because you, and the only way you can really, there's, if we want to go back in history, the Parnellis, the Foyts, there's a very similar strain. I'm lucky enough to have been around Parnelli a little bit, and there's a very similar strain that runs through all these guys. And one thing of it is they all have this innate ability to make decisions, quick decisions, and it's not because they don't react. Like Parnelli told me once, we were driving somewhere, and he was driving, and he said, I can tell you everything these cars are going to do in front of me before they do it, because he analyzes everything in front of him, and that's something that and a lot of people can't do that. I worked with a young kid once who got out of the car. He could tell you everything that happened in that race, and unfortunately, he had talent, and unfortunately, he ended up quitting. But that kid could tell you what lap he ran in a certain spot on the track. He could tell you who he was driving with. He could tell you who he was around. And there are guys, and that's when you start reaching, that's a whole different gear.
Right. Yep.
So I don't know. Well, so who we got for wins tonight? Who we picking?
I think you gotta pick Kyle. It's hard not to pick Kyle Larson.
Yeah.
Right. That was kind of my logic.
Yeah. Especially after that, the race earlier with the pole shuffle. I mean, he was a lot more. He was really frustrated after his prelim night. The track was not conducive. But yeah, he was very dominant, or just minutes ago. So that's where it's tough to not.
I was talking, not watching. Did he run away with it?
Oh yeah.
Did he? Okay.
Yeah, he was so Justin Grant ended up, he's on the pole, but Kyle was very solid. Yeah. So
I really honestly think, I will pick, I always go with who's hot. Larson's hot. And I always go with the king until you knock the king off the hill, right?
Yeah.
So I'll pick Larson. Now I'll tell you that Rico Abreu, I thought the other night looked as good as I've ever seen Rico Abreu drive. At Chili. I felt that. Chris Bell, man, how smooth he ran the other night. That is.
He drives dirt. He looks like he's on pavement, even when he's on the cush and it's gnarly, and it's just, and he's out there just, those hands don't move. That car doesn't move. It doesn't upset. I mean, it's so solid. Yeah.
I agree. And I think it's probably most likely to be Larson, Bell. Like if I had to say my three, that'd be Larson, Bell, Rico. I'm really hoping Kyle Cummins runs top five, because I think he deserves. I think I shouldn't say deserve it. Nobody deserves anything there. You earn what you get.
Right.
But I think that he is kind of coming into his own a little more than he already had.
Yep.
And I like to see him run top five. He's a local guy, local Indiana guy. And I think Justin Grant. I just, when I look at that group, I just don't see a winner coming out of a different set of cars. I could be wrong. They could all run.
Right. Yeah. Hey, they may grenade. You never know what's going to happen. So, but yeah, no, I totally agree with all of that. And it's always a struggle because I watch something. My wife loves to ask me, well, did whoever you want to win? And I'm like, I don't look at it that way. Like, I'm just there to enjoy like what they're doing, because they are all so amazing. I mean, those guys are just incredible to watch, and I just want to soak that part of it in, and just.
I just want a great race.
Exactly.
My favorite Chili Bowl of all time is '94, and that was Paige and PJ, you know, battling out for the win. That will always be my favorite race. It's my favorite race for a lot of reasons. One, that Pager got hurt at the, you know, at Eldora, you know, ended his truck career. You know, he was leaving straight from Eldora, heading to North Carolina. Unfortunately, that never happened. And it's still something that today really bothers me on one level, but we still have him. You know, but that race has a lot more meaning for me today. But I mean, if you just watch it on the surface of a race level, that is an incredible race. They threw everything at Paige, and Paige had something for him every time. He ran just as hard as he had to run. And if Schumann run him in deeper, guess what? He had a little something for Schumann. PJ goes to the back, comes back to the front. PJ run him in, running. You know, I don't know if I don't think PJ threw a right rear at him, but PJ, you know, brushed him a couple of times, and he had something for all of them. And, you know, Kinzer. I mean, you look through that you know, Stevie Reeves, people don't know this today. Stevie Reeves was a great midget driver, great sprint car driver. You know, and when you look at that field, man, that was a spectacular field of racers. And you know, unfortunately, you know, it was something I thought that we were going to see 20 years of. We were going to see Paige and PJ race like this for 20 years. And unfortunately, I never saw it again. And, you know, but I was glad I was there to see it that time.
Right.
So that would always be my favorite.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is just hopefully they can get a handle on the track and as I say, just let those guys do what they do, you know, because it just a good show. That's really what that's all I want to see. So
yeah, I agree. And a safe show.
Yeah.
You know, if there's anybody out there watching who drives any race car, please wear the best safety equipment you can. I always say that. I always try to say that anytime because, you know, Kellen and I and Kimb have all seen people in the pits wearing T-shirts, drivers wearing T-shirts. I've seen Chili Bowl a little bit in these interviews, and man, I have seen what fire can do to someone. You know,
I will never begrudge. Yeah, I will never begrudge somebody that maybe doesn't, you know, spend as much on their car, but that has everything that, you know, not only the best, but you know, up to date. I mean, I've been to a lot of racetracks and I've seen a lot of guys that are using belts that are, you know, a decade old stamped and just crazy stuff like that. I mean, there's no sense to put yourself in that type of a position at all.
Yeah, those types of things really, again, the older I've gotten, it really bother me because, man, some of these things are very preventable.
Yeah.
And just, you know, there's this whole thing like, you know, we're out racing and this, that, and the other. And there's a whole other thing. Somebody's got to say, hey, man, you really, you know, there's things that can happen today that have consequences 50 years from now.
Right.
So, Aaron, this is your show. Race 92 is your baby. David Land, you know, all that money you guys give to David Land. I mean, I can't imagine how much money David Land makes from Race 92, but it's got to be amazing. By the way, hey, has MeUndies called us yet? Do we have any sponsorship? Or ZipRecruiter? Have they called us yet? You know, I just want to thank you guys for allowing me to talk midget racing, you know, for these last couple of hours. I hope we do it again. Next year, I'd love to maybe do some like a race companion on a prelim night or something where we can analyze the racing as it's happening and just talk about it. And again, thank your partners for allowing me to spend some time with you.
Yeah, well, definitely appreciate someone talking about midget racing that knows more than basically all three of us, me, Calvin, and Jacob. We don't really know a lot about midget racing, so that was the whole idea.
Hey, you know, that brings me to something else. Now, Indianapolis is getting another dirt track.
Yes, Circle City Raceway.
It's run by the Bird family, and it's going to be first class.
Yep.
And
all right.
You know, people need to go and support this. You know,
they actually had a preliminary night at the Chili Bowl. They sponsored a preliminary night. So
see the All-Star Circuit of Champions TQ Midgets race at Circle City Speedway.
There we go.
May 20th is our first race there.
USAC's got a couple races there, sprint midget. I think the World of Outlaws, or I think the All-Star Sprint Cars have a race there.
Yeah, we're running with them that first night.
Okay.
The big sprint cars, but
I mean,
the team
this is a real deal.
Right?
This is no joke. I mean, they've taken Marion County Fairgrounds. And I looked at Marion County about 15 years ago and wondered if you could make a racetrack out of it. Yep. And I thought, man, I don't have the money for that. But boy,
and they tried. They ran an outlaw kart race there a couple of years ago, and it went miserable. Everybody complained, and they just. But I don't think they let Bernie have the track. They didn't let, and they have the track now. I mean, they went in there, they got the equipment.
And we're going to have a first class dirt track right on the edge of the city. Yep. And right off the interstate. And I'm telling you, man, I
such a cool thing.
This excited for a while.
Over $1 million worth of infrastructure improvements.
Wow, totally I didn't know that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, man, the Bird family,
great.
The Bird family, and again, these are people I don't know, but I remember when their dad used to, when they had the cars with Rich Fogler and they sponsored Rich, and he would walk through the pits, or walk around, talk to people before the races. He was a nice man. And the Bird family has always given so much to auto racing.
Yep.
And that's something that this sport relies on people. Like this level of sport depends so much on the people like the Bird family who just give. When they don't have to, they could have taken that money. And I'm not trying to say they're the only person who owns it. Whoever's a partner, I know Petrie's did the track work. I don't want to shortcut anybody. That's the only name I know associated with it. So I don't mean to cut anybody out. But this sport depends so much on these people, whether it was J.W. Hunt back in the day who lined the pockets, $100 here, $100 there. The racers, and we could go on and on. I mean, there's just an endless list of these people, and I want to say thank you. If anybody like that's watching or hears this, I want to say thank you to them too, because without them, man, we don't have the sport. I mean, that's just how it is.
Yep. But yeah, I greatly appreciate Aaron. You guys invite me to come on. Yeah.
Very nice. I was a little disappointed we were not allowed to use Race 92 studios. and hopefully when we start doing the political discussions, we can use
right, absolutely.
When we have a Politico talk, no, I'm just joking. That's just inside joke. I just want to, again, thank everybody. And David, obviously we didn't meet in person. I have watched your Twitter feed. I've watched a lot of your videos. I have a lot of respect for a lot of the things you say, even though I don't always agree.
I don't make videos for people to agree with them.
That's right, and I respect that because, as Kellen and Kimb know, and Aaron knows about me, people don't always agree with me either. So, but I respect anybody who has an opinion who's willing to put it out there, and for you, it's easy to hurt people's feelings and egos, even people that you don't even think watch.
Oh boy, attention. I've been surprised a few times.
Because you think of yourself, "Oh, I'm just talking on YouTube. What's the big deal?"
I don't think that anymore.
Right. And I've had the same situations, right? But I mean, if that's what you believe, that's what you believe, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I respect you for doing that.
And you do have to walk a fine line, like you said. And I always try to be fair. And especially recently, I mean, like the last 2 or 3 years, I've really tried to be careful because, like you said, I mean, what I guess I didn't realize, if you get 20,000 people watching a video, that's a significant portion of the racing community that's seen that. Yeah. So, it's definitely an interesting direction my life has taken. There's no doubt about it. But I'm definitely very happy that I am where I am and that people like you watch, even if you don't agree with me. And I'm looking forward to meeting you guys all in person. I'm hoping to be at a lot of races this summer, and hopefully it's a lot of Indiana short track racing.
Well, I think that would be good. And I think, me personally, I think when you look at, IMS, and I know IMS means a lot to you, and it holds a very special place in my heart. I don't live very far from there, and And when Jim Neighbors used to sing Back Home Again in Indiana, man, I remember one time in this, I won't say who because it sounds like I'm name dropping, and I don't want to seem like that kind of person. But I was standing, I was lucky to be standing in a gentleman's suite, and it was me and a pretty well known safety manufacturer and the gentleman on the suite, and all three of us were just crying. And that's how much it means.
Yeah.
And it means a lot to me because if it wasn't for that place, I wouldn't know Kellen.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know Kim, and I wouldn't know Aaron, and I wouldn't have met David Land, and I wouldn't be in a relationship with the woman I'm in a relationship with. I wouldn't have any of that.
Yep.
And it's all because of that one place.
Right.
And it means a lot to me. It means even more the older I get.
I hear you completely on that. I mean, it seriously, it crushed me to not, I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way, but not being there this year, man, that was tough to take. And I think a lot of people who don't have either like a familial connection or just that connection of love for that track and that race, they can never understand it until they've either been there or experienced that or grown that connection. I think there were a lot of people who were like, oh, well, who cares? You just watch it on TV, then you don't, if you're telling me that, you don't get it,
Right.
Yeah, it ain't the same. It ain't the same. I mean, and there's another place I think that we found out that when it's empty, boy, it's a lot different than when it's full.
Yeah.
When you put whatever that number they're going to use, 250,000 to 7 million, whatever that number was, every year it changes, whatever that number is that people use, boy, you put that amount of people in that facility and you talk about electric. I mean, it is absolutely electric. And when there's a pass for the lead late in a race, or there's unfortunately a big crash, and I'll never forget this. Played Little League baseball. My dad worked on an IndyCar team. Before we went to the game, we went to the Speedway, and qualifying. It was when Gordon Smiley had crashed, and it happened. We weren't listening to it on the radio. My mom and I, and we pulled into the tunnel. We parked and we started walking, and this place is full, and nobody's saying a word. I mean, it is as silent. And my mom and I looked at each other. I was like, probably 10 or 11. We looked at each other like something's wrong. I mean, we both said at the same time, some bad's happened. I mean, and that's how that place is. This.
Yeah.
Because you can, it's in the air, and that, again, a horribly sad day.
Well, it becomes a living, breathing place when you got,
That's right.
the amount of, wow, there's a double flip in the C main here.
Yeah,
but,
starting off.
But when you get the population size of a small city in a 2.5 mile rectangle, and like you said, there's Sammy went over. Okay, well, there's nothing more silent than the Indianapolis Motor Speedway after a crash. With 200,000 people in there, you can hear a pin drop. It's
yeah.
And again, it's one of those things that unless you're there, you can't experience.
Right. Yeah. People say, well, you can't see the whole track. You can't do this, which you can now. You go through the videos. Boy, that's a sad sight right there. I mean, I don't care how many times Sammy's won it. Sammy wants to win it again.
Yeah.
And it means that much to him. But, I kind of got lost track, but like you said, I mean, it's a living, breathing thing. And you can't describe. Oh, I know. I was gonna say, people say, well, you can't see the whole track, or you can't do this, or you can't do that. Well, you can now with all the video boards. They got video boards for everything. You can probably watch on your phone if you know how to cheat the system a little bit.
Right.
But I don't care. I went there a million times and couldn't see anything but from my seat, and it still meant the same as it means by watching on video.
Right.
At the track. I remember I was sitting, and I realized we're carrying on here and off track of Chili Bowl, but I was sitting right where Dixon crashed, and I like to sit because we can get in and out quicker. I just sit on the inside between 1 and 2. I sat in those seats, actually where you were standing when you went and did that one video and you were showing the seats. by the museum.
Right. Yeah.
We'd like to sit there because it's quick in, quick out.
Oh boy, you were in the splash zone for that.
And I mean, and we were watching the actual board, and we heard the car sliding behind us, or something sliding. Heard a noise behind us, and turned around, and I mean, people like watching that on film. You cannot describe on film what it was like to see it in person. And when I say violent and loud, it was the most violent crash I'd ever seen. I've seen a million sprint cars and midgets crash, and it was one of the loudest crashes I'd ever heard too.
Yeah.
And it was one of the very few times in my life where I didn't know if I really wanted to be there after that. And that's how violent it was. And Kellen knows me well enough to know that that's not common for me. It had a pretty deep, and I will tell you the honest truth too. I had honestly thought he'd hit his head when it got upside down and actually hit the roll bar, where it split the car. Right. The angle I had, it looked like it hit his head.
Sure.
And it looked like it was the worst of the worst. And I really thought we had lost not only a great champion, but a great man, a really solid human being. And I just, man, that was hard on me. Brian, the two crashes that's been hard on me was when Brian was unfortunately killed at Belleville, and when that crash at Dixon. Those two got my attention. And if Kellen knows this, I have little names for crashes, like attention getters, like I call them, and career rethinkers.
Yeah.
Like some of these crashes are career rethinkers, especially in the midgets. Sprint cars, you start, boy, is this something I really want to do? But that one had me thinking, hey man, is this something you really want to be a part of? But thankfully it was okay, and and you get over it. But I can't explain how violent that was.
Yeah.
Well, I think.
All right, so
on that note, on that happy note.
So we've got Larson winning pretty much by majority here, right?
Yeah.
Pretty much majority
Sounds
feels
like
that Larson's going to win.
Back in the day, Scott Baue, you never let people pick the same driver. Back in the day, you were like, nope, Kellen already picked. Kellen already picked Kyle Larson. You have to pick somebody else. You never let. This is like new. This is new Scott Baue. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with it.
I'll use it too. I'll use it though, Scott Baue. I'll use it too. I gotta lead people down the road. I can't just take it right at the beginning.
You want to punch him in the mouth first.
Yeah. All right. Now, Kellen, what do I like to do before you go out? Like when you're strapped in?
There were a lot of times. So how you knew it was going to be a good night, like the metric was on how hard Scott would hit you on the helmet before you went out. Like that was his confidence level. Like you kind of knew, like, just a little tap. It's like, we're kind of out of luck then. But if you thought you might have a concussion, it was going to be a good night. So yeah,
that's right. Well, it's I honestly, I think it's a pick to me. I think Bell. Me personally, if I'm telling my truth, I think Chris Bell's going to win it. That's my gut feeling. Like I said, he could run last. I mean, I don't gamble, and there's a reason why. I would literally go broke if I was picking auto racing for a living. I would absolutely go broke. I mean, broker than I am now.
Right.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Scott. And Kellen, your point earlier about like seeing a great race is so much more important than who's going to win, because there's always, I mean, if I went to 100 races, there might be one guy that I'd be like, I don't want that guy to win.
Right.
But like the number of people that you look, you're going, man, that would be so great for him. I can
tell you exactly who you don't want to win tonight.
You be quiet.
I can tell you that he stands a good chance of winning too.
You be quiet. I don't want to hear it from you, Scott Baue. But no, you're right. But it's so much more, like who's going to win is like a guess. And maybe some of you have a slightly more educated guess than people like me. But the thing of it is the race. If it's Christopher Bell or Kyle Larson, I want to see those two. They're starting really close together.
Right.
And there's been sort of a give and take between them for the Chili Bowl. That's what I want to see. I want to see Kyle Cummins move up from 10th. That's what I want to see.
You want to see everybody, lace the gloves up and go out. I mean, it's a heavyweight fight. Like, have at it, boys. Just go for it. Right. Don't let anything get in the way of it. Just
that's when guys. I don't like guys running over each other.
Yeah.
But as you well know, I don't mind it when you lean on each other.
Right.
Big difference. And I don't like guys who put guys in bad positions that they have to decide they're going to save your life.
Right.
They're not necessarily saving their own life. They're going to save your life and let you make that pass.
Right.
I don't like that, but I agree. I like a race when guys just flat get on the wheel and go at it. And that's what I'm hoping for tonight. I mean, I think that's what it's lining up for. This track, they'll get it pretty good. I imagine they'll widen out. What do you think, Kellen? About 22 laps in, they'll start getting racier on the top.
I mean, it most likely, if you watch the shootout, it was similar to that, the Winged Outlaw main. It was incredibly fast for the first 20-ish laps and then kind of started to make that change, and that's probably what we'll see again tonight. They'll do a full rework
if you see somebody blistering fast early, they're probably not going to be late unless unless they just got something figured out that you just don't know. But typically guys who get early come back.
Right.
Not always. I mean, it's like everything else, but.
Well, and this is where we like we mentioned earlier about, even the few cockpit adjustments that you do have with the level of just raw talent that we're talking about at this point. Like,
I mean, we're talking about 16-year-old kids running second. Now, Trey Markham's not that old either. And Trey Markham's a great sprint car driver.
Yeah.
But, Days and Persley just turned 16.
Yep.
Did some of the best equipment, and he's learning, he's been learning all year on the fly.
Yep.
Kid's got real talent, man. And you couple that with a little confidence. I mean, there's a lot of those
dangerous
guys in that race.
I mean, that. And everybody, you don't send your entry blank into Tulsa unless you're hungry for some sort of a win. I mean, know you're not going to go there, and you're not going to be making, the A main on Saturday night, but you're there to prove something. End of story.
Right.
Everybody is.
Right. Even the guys that go there partying all night.
Yeah.
Even that guy, when he's walking out of Elephant Run at 3:00 in the morning, saying, you know what? I can still get sober enough to be pretty fast tomorrow.
Yep.
Even if you puke in your helmet, you got
right, man. How many people? That's a whole nother level of stories that we have a lot more time. Man, we can really tell some stories on that.
Yeah.
That's what Tom Bigelow always said. Bigelow loved to party, and when he drove for Carl and them, Gilhausen, and he said, "Well, the reason I'm so fast is because I want to get out of the car. I've got a couple handles, right? I want to get out of that race car. I don't want to be in it." I love Tom. We're lucky enough today. I'm still lucky enough today to see Tom. Tom. He drove. I went to my first race. Tom had to carry me out of the grandstands to help Mom to the pits because it was a rain out at Grant City. He had to carry me.
That's funny.
I was, a newborn.
Right.
And he went up and helped Mom. So I've always had this great love for Tom. But puking stories, man. In the helmet, we got a good friend who does that too.
Yep.
Yeah.
That he does.
Well, Aaron, this is your show, man. I know I've ran my mouth. That's what I do. But what do you got to say? I mean, first of all, I really, I only got to know Aaron over last year. But Aaron and Kevin, I really respect guys like this because they have a real love for racing. And again, without people like Aaron and his dad Kevin, there's none of this sport.
Yep.
And it just takes all that. And, he started this business, and I'm sure he started for fun, but I'm sure he also started to be part of it. And I know you're wanting to create a lifestyle brand eventually out of it. And, again, hopefully going in the future, we can do more of these,
Yeah, absolutely. First off, this is your world, Scott. We're just all living in it.
That's right. That's how it's always been. And don't anybody here forget it. So, I'm not an only child, but I was born 10 years after everybody else. So when you're that young, you get a lot of free reign. You get to express your opinions a lot as a kid.
Shoot.
Man, I tell you, that's the thing about being from a racing family. And if anybody's watching that grew up in a racing family, I don't know if anybody's watching right now, but that's the one thing that you travel constantly together. I mean, you're always in a we were in a dually, or before that with my brothers, and it was a station wagon, and the family's just constantly together. And most families it works out good, some of them doesn't, but man, you just spend so much time on the road. So racing kids grow up quick. I mean, you don't see kids in racing families who are shy of opinions and thoughts, things like that, and don't understand that when you get a flat tire and you don't have a spare, that there's ways you got to get people to stop and help you. You learn all these little life hacks along the way.
They just keep their hair and they'll stop.
Right.
I tell you, I'm not going to keep the hair, and that's going to disappoint a lot of people. But I'm not going to keep their hair. But I had a feeling it was going to be a source of discussion. It's pretty ridiculous. But the great part about it is I don't get stopped anymore in stores asking, if I know where the towels are. I had that happen to me all the time. I would get stopped all the time at a Menards. Do you know where this is at, or do you know where that's at? I don't know why, but now it doesn't happen. It does not happen at all. That loser, he has no business.
He has no idea where he's at.
No, it's because of the luscious mane that it is people are like, oh, you look like a lion, you must be in charge. So they just leave you alone. They're gonna go find the other guys, the little guys.
I might have had to pause the feed on Little 500 night whenever I see, they're interviewing Shane, and I see somebody flash in the background. I'm like, I know that's Scott, but there's no way. And then I realize he turns full to the camera.
Man, that was, I really felt bad for Shane tonight. We had that, man, we had the lead with like less than 100 to go.
Yep.
I spotted for Shane Hollingsworth the Little 500. Man, we're so close. I could just come in for the, that's the first time I spotted for him in 10 years.
Yeah.
I started spotting for him when we first ran Silver Crown cars, and then I stopped, and somebody else, Rick Laughlin who did a great job. And Shane asked me, because Rick didn't want to do it anymore, he asked me if I wanted to come spot. I was like, boy, I don't know, man. My eyes aren't near as good as they used to be. It used to be 20 years, I guess, now I think about it.
Yeah.
My eyes aren't as good as they used to be. But we got, he got himself into the lead. I just helped. But I really felt bad for him, because he's really, that race means a lot to Shane.
Yeah.
And, you talk about another guy, and Kim knows this. Kim watched Shane Hollingsworth run Kenyon Midgets, and there's another guy who is a straight up race car driver.
Absolutely.
He decided to go to Rose-Hulman instead of pursuing a racing career. And that guy can win. I mean, Shane Hollingsworth can flat out win. Great race car driver.
Yeah. I was listening to that race when I was on my way home from somewhere, and I was like, come on. I wanted that for him so much.
But Bobby Santos is such a good dude.
Yeah.
I couldn't, I'm sure it hurt Shane, and it kind of hurt me, not hurt me for Shane. It doesn't matter if I'm a spotter and he wins. I mean, I'm happy for him. But Santos is a good dude, and I was glad to see. It means so much to him. And there's another guy there, grew up in a racing family, and
Yep.
success. And I was really happy to see him have that success.
Yeah. Well, and at the that night before sort of weekend there around Indy 500 weekend when we had the midgets and sprints and Silver Crown races, man, he was just Bobby Santos was on it, and it was in Victory Lane, it was him, or it was Cody Swanson, just like that whole weekend. Yeah. My gosh.
Cody Swanson was uber hot at that time too.
Oh my gosh. Yep. Yes.
White hot.
Yep.
He won that. What is that? F2000, David? Is that what those cars? I forget.
Yeah. F2000. Indy Pro 2000.
Right.
Yes, that one. Oh man, he was so impressive, and everybody in the booth was just so excited for him. Even the regular announcer, who's got like all these other guys.
You got to call that. I forgot that you got to call Cody winning that. That's right.
Yeah. So, well, we didn't do the F2000 thing. We just did the other one. No.
I'm sorry.
We did everything but that one. But yeah, I got to be there for it because I was there for the weekend. So it was a great race. Man,
Swanson used to come in the shop. I don't know him very well, but the stories I've heard of Swanson, you want to talk about a guy, Tracy Hines level technical.
Yeah.
Cody Swanson. Now I've heard some stories about Cody Swanson there. Like he has this meticulous notebooks and just the weights and heights and spring rates. And he knows just everything, how he wants that thing to feel. But that's why he's so successul.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's what works for Cody.
But not known for his emotional detachment. You get him in Victory Lane, he's a bit of a crier.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
He's a crier.
Yeah. That's good though, man. It's good to see it means something. Hey, speaking of this race coming up, that Brian Carver kid.
Yeah.
How amazing is that, right?
Yep. Wild story there.
Carver wins that give back, turns it down for the money. People then raise the money for him to get the ride.
Yep.
And he had a great.
He goes out, wins two drillers at the shootout, and then
he's looked really good.
Yep.
Out here.
And here he is in a C main on his first time ever in a midget. So.
Yeah. Is that Andrew Deal starting up front?
That is outside front row.
Yeah. He's a good racer. You ran against Andrew, right?
Carson Macedo, another one who so much success, and he's starting inside second. This is his first Chili Bowl.
People don't realize Carson was kind of beating and banging around Indiana there for a while.
Yep.
Kind of looking for rides.
Yep.
And I'm not trying to speak out of school. Again, this is a guy I don't know, but kind of look for opportunities. And then they put together that sprint car deal, and he's good.
Yeah, he's out on the West Coast in the Charlton deal. Yeah, and it's unfortunately tied into that, but yeah, no, very, very successful. So.
Watch out for Emerson Axum too when you're watching this race. He's starting in the back. Yeah. I saw him in TQs and a couple of other things last year. Man, he's one of those kids that you're literally going to have to try and slow him down just a little bit because
he's another one just turned 16.
Turned 16.
We got to wrap this up. Aaron needs to wrap us up.
Yep.
Yeah, like I said, I can just end the stream, and I'm sure Scott will have a lot more to say after this. But no, first off, thanks everyone for coming. Thanks, Kim and Kellen. Really appreciate having different insights on something that I enjoy midget racing, but I'm nowhere as far as experience as you guys. So I definitely appreciate it. And but yeah, this kind of like what Scott said. This whole thing kind of started with a T-shirt idea. It grew with David Land. I have a lot of that to thank for David Land because he definitely helped us get a lot of exposure. Thank you, David. But yeah, no, it's been great talking to everyone. It's always great talking to you, Scott.
Yeah, I really enjoyed talking to you and your dad and you guys. And Kellen and Kim, you guys know how much you guys mean to me. And David, it is a pleasure to meet the David Land.
Well, it's nice to meet you, Scott. I'm definitely holding you to that midget thing.
Hey man, if we do it, we're talking about putting together like a little cheapy thing, that like with a Honda, like a D2 motor.
Uh-huh.
And if we can do that, something that isn't, it means it's a race, it's a race motor. The D2 series races. But if we can do something like that, I'd have no problem with you taking laps. I've seen you run the other cars. You do fine. I thought you did really well when you went out. Was out west?
Yeah, I was out west. I was at Button Willow in a Formula Ford. I really only had one day in that car, so I don't want to toot my own horn, but I felt like I did pretty okay for what I.
Hey,
given.
Man, I'll tell you what. I'll tell you exactly what I told Aaron, and I'll tell anybody. I really respect people who comment on motorsports who are also willing to get in a car, or are willing to go work on a car, or willing to put their
skin
effort
in the game.
Put skin. Thank you, Kellen.
Yeah, I mean that's
And Kellen knows how much this means to me. If you're willing to do that, man, I respect it. Because and I had a little back and forth with Dave Argabright one time on a message board.
I forgot about that.
And he was, he's telling everybody how to spend their money, which that's fine. But like I told him, that'd be like me trying to tell you how to run a publishing company. I can't do it. If you come out and do this, and then you have this magic budget that's right for everybody, then let's do it. I don't have a problem. But I mean, do it first and then tell me about it. And nothing against Dave. I know Kim really likes Dave, and he's a great writer, and I'm sure he's a really good person. But I really balk at that. Don't tell me what's right for what we're doing. You're going to save me from myself. All right. Well, first of all, you got to know what you're saving me from before you save me, right?
There are very few instances in life that are, one size fits all. I mean,
that's right.
Super.
And this is the
rare,
article this is the article from like 99 or 2000, and motor costs are higher today. Actually, the strange part is the Toyota midget motor is actually cheaper than what those Ed Pinks were.
Yeah.
Those Ed Pink Fords were more expensive than these Toyota motors are today on the lease deal. I mean, you got to pay for the lease, and there's contracts, and there's very few that are owned outright, Kellen. I don't want to speak out of school.
Right.
But a lot of them are not owned outright. You actually sign deals, and then you pay for the rebuilds, and the motors all have mileage limits, but that's why they all survive.
Yep.
That's why you don't see these Toyota midget motors blow up. And SR11s are really the same way. You don't see a lot of failures with Gary's motors.
Nope.
And these are the reasons why. It's not.
Is a lease deal better than buying them outright then?
I will tell you right now, if I had the money, I would go right over to Speedway Engines and I'd buy 10 of those things right now. Because even though we build our own motors, I know what it takes to build a motor. I know the time it takes to build a motor. The parts, and why we can save money on the labor. I would rather bolt it in. When it blows up, I yell at the guys at Speedway. I pull another one out from underneath the rack, put it in the car, and that would be my druthers, but that's not where we're at. Currently we are, Chris is building a D2 Honda. We just saw Ethan Mitchell run a national motor Honda recently. He ran pretty good. I think he transferred, right?
I believe he did.
So Chris is currently working on that. So he and Bill are building it with guidance from my father, of course, and which means sitting in a chair pointing a lot. And and then he's going to try to build a national motor, I think, next year. That Honda deal is not bad. It's got some potential. There's plus and minuses. It's really about the best motor. It's one of the better motors you can get and build yourself, and it's still pretty on par with the Toyotas. I mean, there's still gonna be better motors. The SR11 Toyotas are the cream of the crop, but there's other great motors out there, and I think that Honda deal has they've gotten a lot of bugs figured out with them, and thankfully the Mitchells for doing it.
Yeah,
the Mitchells have spent a lot of time and effort with 4P out in, I think, Danville or where they're at, and Larry Hayduck up north and here in Indianapolis, and they've gotten that motor to run pretty good. He's had a couple fast times over the last couple of years, and so yeah, that's it.
Well, yeah, thanks again, everyone. And David, I want to give you a moment to kind of plug your channel and.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
sure.
David,
Yeah.
plug your channel.
I'll definitely plug. It's really easy. The name you see on the screen, type that in your YouTube search bar, and up I come. It's very easy. But you should definitely head over to Race 92 and buy some David Land shirts for sure. Use code David10 at checkout when you buy 2, save 10%. That's a great deal. But outside of that, I have to echo a lot of the other statements. Aaron, thank you for having me on, and I'm happy to be partnered with you guys at Race 92 and hopefully help build your brand.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And this was kind of an impromptu decision to bring you on. I had Scott on, and I was like, we got to try to bring David on.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm really glad that you did. And again, I wish your partners had come on. I love talking racing. David's a lot more knowledgeable in sports cars, way more knowledgeable in sports cars than I'll ever be. That's by choice, by the way. No, I'm
sure.
I love. Don't get me wrong. I love sports car racing. Don't take that the wrong way. I really have a lot of respect for those guys. This is where I live, though. I love the midgets and sprints, and I love watching the IndyCar stuff, and I just enjoy any chance I get to talk about it. It's just, I guess it's the culmination of a life's, I don't know what you'd call it. It's been a profession. It's different times. I've been a huge fan at different times. I've been a part of the sport at different times. I mean, it's just, but I just love talking about it.
I hear you.
But yeah, before I end the stream here, I will mention Racing Nation TV has a stream going on now, I believe. So
yes, watch that.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Watch Racing Nation. And hey, how about our boy Dunlap's car? Look at that.
Yeah, Gary Taylor and the Brian.
Schumann.
Yeah. That's actually is that Schumann's? Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's Schumann. Oh no, Schumann's right there.
Schumann's
I'm sorry,
in the 32. Yeah, Schumann's in the Witz car. So Schumann's leading, and then they had Gary Taylor's running up. So they actually ended up both. But Brian Dunlap and his dad, phenomenal story. They actually purchased their first midget from me. They bought a car from me at Tulsa, and they've built it into. They are some of the premier owners at Tulsa. They don't race outdoors much, maybe once or twice a year, but they have absolutely some of the nicest cars in that building. Can absolutely capable of winning this race, without a doubt. And then great drivers. Casey Schumann is so talented for as little driving as he does, through the year. He can go out there and again, right now leading a C main. And Gary Taylor, who also is unbelievable.
Boy, underrated, right? You talk about underrated.
Man, who is also, speaking about other disciplines, is the front end geometry guy for Andretti Autosport.
That's right.
Right. So yeah, a guy who, through the week isn't even touching, isn't working in this field, but Gary's done a little bit of everything. He's, between, he's worked for Tim Engler Injection and again with Andretti, and so kind of a journeyman in just motorsports in general.
Oh, their other car just broke.
Looks like that's Gary right there. So yeah.
How about, we're talking about diversity? How about Selzy? The Selzy name, right?
Yeah, right.
I mean, in those guys,
Yep. So yeah, just gonna be potential to be a really cool night. Everybody's fingers crossed for a great track, and maybe not even a great track, but the ability to have a good race. We'll go for that.
I agree. Boy, you know what? The way this thing's pushing up, man, I think it's going to be right on the fence.
Right on the fence. Yep. I think so.
These last few races, it's pushed right up against the fence. Now, I know they'll do a deeper work.
They will, but it won't hold. You can't expect to rework a track like that and it hold again.
Explain to David what that's like when you're up there on that cushion. I mean, it's trying to rip the wheel out of your hand.
Well, it is. It's such a, these cars are so twitchy anyway. You don't have a lot of right rear. I mean, it's not like you got a big tire, but when you've got a curb that grabs a hold of the right rear there, I mean, the car is naturally just wanting to flip over on you anyway, and you the scary part about it is you've got to keep a foot full. I mean, you've got to be in the throttle, because the worst thing you could ever do, you lift and you're going to destroy a car.
Yeah, exact opposite of all human instinct.
Yeah, absolutely is. I mean, that's 100%. Your reaction is you kind of want to be timid and really you have to approach it where you're just wanting to knock it down and go along with it. So yeah.
That's a great description. I never heard that the cushion described that way. So that's just a fantastic description. Very, very descriptive. I mean, I really have a kind of a sense, obviously without having done it, to know kind of what that's like. I mean, that.
So one thing with these midgets, sprint cars and midgets are similar. They are different because the sprint car has so much more horsepower.
Exactly, and so much more tire.
Something here. And I don't mean this anyway. A sprint car, you can be a little lazier with the throttle, right? Am I wrong?
This has been said for decades. Yeah, I mean, it's always been said that it's easier. And realistically,
because you have instant horsepower and torque.
Yeah, and also when you look at the car, I mean, when you look at a midget, you're sitting in a car like,
how about that?
This, you're on top of the left rear, and in the sprint car, you're sitting more like a street car. The bigger tires, the car is more stagger, but you're still, it's a lot. I'm going to say, for lack of a better term, a lot more stable.
Yeah.
In that sense. But yeah, I mean, a midget, when you're doing it right, it's you're just trying to keep it from eating itself. I mean,
and you gotta keep those wheels turning.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely. Well, how many guys this week?
I always say, especially a midget.
This is such a tough track to do that as well. A lot of people don't understand. You're running such a tall gear here.
That's right.
Extracurricular activities after the check.
Yeah, I just saw that. Yeah, with Thiel. But yeah, you've got to be so careful here more than outdoor, because with so much gear in the car, it's so easy to overbrake. And you can kill the motor. And there's been so many guys through the week here that they are, they're trying to run that bottom and trying to keep the car pinned down and keep the nose down. And they brake, and then that's where you'll see like the car just kind of lose itself and just slide up the track all of a sudden. And sometimes they get lucky and they get punted and it takes back off for them, and then other times they don't. And that's it.
I don't know what they're running for gear. They may be running a 698. They might be running a 720.
It's in that ballpark, yeah.
And you got a 378 ring and pinion. You've got a ton of gear split. I mean, you got a tiny bottom gear and a giant top gear. And when you've got that plus that 14 to 1 compression, I mean, it takes a bit to get them rolling.
Yep.
And so when you lock that rear tire up, that's what happens. And then that's why I always like to run a 433 and just taking the weight out, just machine it down and take the weight out so I can get rid of the gear split.
Sure.
And the car rolls better too. That's my theory, But I like that because you can get rid of that split, and the car is not one to slide the rear tires, lock up,
right?
That sort of. A lot of guys like using that big gear split because they use it to help turn the car.
Yep.
So through engine brake, it's just engine brake.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Just throwing the J brake on.
Right. That's right.
So. All right.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and end the stream here in a second. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, David Land.
Thanks, everybody. I really appreciate it. I was going to call. I called Jagger Jones. He's long story short, we're kind of all related. I called him to get his opinion on like a young driver's view, and I couldn't get him, but he said he'd be willing to do one of these anytime. So maybe we can get him on another show. And so hopefully we can do that. But again, hopefully there's another show. Again, thank you so much, Kim.
Thank you for inviting me. This was so much fun.
Yeah, I have so much respect for the things you've done and the things you've seen and your opinion on a lot of things that have nothing to do with racing. And,
I have them.
I know. We've all heard them, whether we wanted to or not. And David, again, like I've said a million times, thank you so much for just lending your greatness to this small little
Greatness.
event. Bringing your presence.
That's a way to put it. Let's put that on a T-shirt, right?
Yes, bringing the presence.
Bring my greatness. Yeah.
David, to do that.
Well, next time everybody sees me, you'll probably see me without the luscious hair. But
yeah, we'll all be disappointed.
If you see me before March, you'll see it.
All right.
Well, we out. Oh, hey, is anybody smash the like button or hit the subscribe? How's that done, David? How do you do that?
You gotta smash that like button and subscribe for more content here on Race 92.
That's right. Has MeUndies ever got with us? Have they got with us yet? Or how about Harry's Razors? Harry get with us?
Raid Shadow Legends.
That's right.
We're gonna have to get you an agent, Scott, because you're
right.
We're gonna have to start talking about free plugs too. You're giving an awful lot of free real estate.
Oh, hey, you have no idea, man. I got a ton lined up. I got just free plugs lined up for miles.
Oh,
just
shoot.
random objects in my house. I'm gonna tell everybody to buy.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and end this. Make sure you subscribe. Check out Pitstop Power Hour. Check out Dave Elaine on YouTube. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It was fun.
Bye.
All right.